All right, so straight up, I stopped paying attention to WoW lore at the end of Shadowlands because it was very bad.
You kept going throughout Shadowlands.
Well,
That's
I fell off through Shadowlands, and by the end of it, I was completely depleted. So, you know,
Cheers.
I tried, like, I paid attention a bit in Dragonflight, but not, you know. Firax Evil, Iridikron or whatever his name is an ass and kind of spiraled into TWW. Alex Straza's around.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. That's about it.
Things of what happened, yeah. So the Shadowlands situation was pretty disastrous on a lot of departments. I don't know if you saw like the sub numbers fly by, but they're lucky they had like Classic because Shadowlands did a lot of damage. And in essence, what's happening with the story
Weren't those like
is
extrapolated numbers?
Yeah, like they're not official numbers. Yeah.
But like, yeah, enough info. Okay.
Yeah. But in essence, some are wondering, like, should Blizzard just retcon and forget about the Shadowlands? But there are certain story elements that are coming over, like Anduin's trauma, for example, from the War Within, deeply rooted in the Shadowlands. And not all things from the Shadowlands are bad. Like, you got stuff like Sire the Nepheus, or maybe even the first ones. There are concepts from the Shadowlands that were not totally bad. But stuff like the Jailer is definitely something that they kind of want to forget about, seemingly.
I can't imagine
with,
why.
good reason. Exactly. So enter Dragonflight, and honestly, I think they moved mountains with Dragonflight because they came from so far behind with the Shadowlands.
Oh, hold up. I'm gonna interrupt you a second. Did you like the Dragonflight lore? Did you think it was good?
I mean, good is out there. But compared to where they came from, I think that they've done a wonderful job, and I really enjoyed myself with Dragonflight. It definitely has things that I'm like, okay, that was just not good. But also parts that I'm like, wow, this is some of the best quests that you've done so far. There is a blue Dragonflight questline, which genuinely, no joke, no sarcasm, is one of the best questlines that they've ever done.
The
It
Caligos
remembers
one
the
at the beginning?
past. Sorry?
The Caligos one at the beginning of the expansion? Or is there a separate
Middle
one?
of the expansion.
Middle, okay. I think I do remember something cool about some blue Dragonflight stuff.
Yeah. Basically, you bring like the spirits of Malygos and Sindragos to rest, and you learn more about what the Dragonflight's been up to. And they talk about the past of the Blue Dragonflight, what they're currently doing, and they're setting up a future for them. But also in a way, which I thought was really cool, there was one dragon in there that's gone through a lot of storytelling and a lot of messed up things. And Caligos is like, hey, do you want to come back? And she just says like, nah, I don't want to. And I was like, this is so cool. For the first time, there's a character that's actively like, you know what? I've done my adventures. I don't want to come back. And it's just respected and it's done. It's very nicely. My major critique when it comes to the story of Dragonflight is that they lost the balance between epic moments and emotional moments. For me, both things need to happen for a good storytelling. So, for example, if you think back to Warcraft 3, where Thrall and Gromash took on Manoroth, and it was a really cool epic battle scene and explosions, and then Gromash goes like, Thrall, I freed myself. No, old friends, you freed all of us. And it's like, all right, that's pulling on the heartstrings right there. But it also had epic moments. So in Dragonflight, there was a lot of pulling on the heartstrings, but not a lot of epic moments that made me go like, I'm going to remember this. So that is my major critique when it comes to the story of Dragonflight.
Okay. What was exactly... Okay, so for me, I usually focus, like, the Blue Dragonflight quest, I remember some of it. I remember it being pretty cool, for sure. But a lot of, like... I guess a lot of like what I've focused on, probably also because like Race the World First, prep brain, you click a quest, auto turn in, move on, you know, you don't really understand what you're reading, you're just going because you're prepping 20 tunes and stuff like that. For me, it's just like a lot of the major story beats, like what's the overarching story of Dragonflight. I don't think the Blue Dragonflight was like directly part of the main story, right? That entire thing was about like Vault of the Incarnates, the 4 like evil dragons, Farak,
yeah, so
Iridikron,
Dragonflight, what happens is really weird. So Dragonflight has, they got this arc going on where, oh my god, these primal incarnates are free from prison. And last time that we dealt with them, we were like fully powered. We are now depowered. The aspects is like Deathwing is gone and we don't have our powers anymore. What do we do, right? And Dragonflight starts off with the idea of, okay, we're going to re-empower the aspects. And Alexstrasza thinks that if we just deal with the problems amongst the flights, then we get our powers back, right? That does not work. And then the story progresses, and you still deal with the problems, because what else are you going to do? And you're trying to figure out a way to deal with these Primal Incarnates. And part of it was for Caligos to bring like the family and the Blue Dragonflight back together. That whole family line for Caligos works because that's his whole deal, just not for the overarching story. And then you got the Bronze storyline with the Infinite Dragonflight. That's something that's been built up. You got the Green Dragonflight with a new leader. Alex Strauss has been forgotten about for some reason. The Red Dragonflight got no story. And that's really weird, because near the end of the expansion, it kind of felt like, okay, we got the War Within coming now. We need to wrap up these things and we need to quickly go. So what happens if you do the Emerald Dream? We quickly deal with Virak. Viranov is quickly on our side. Iridacron is quickly sent off because he's going to come back into the future. The dragons are now re-empowered for some reason. And Keeper Tear is back. Congratulations, you've done Dragonflight. Here's the next expansion. I'm like, that went really quick. What did we just do, huh?
Sounds like what they did with BFA and Ashara and N'Zoth.
Oh, yeah. But
we don't talk about that.
That was like N'Zoth being freed from his prison is dealt with in a patch that was ridiculous. 100%. So in that regard, like the pacing just took miles near the end of Dragonflight. Like we got place to go and we need these pieces to happen. Like for some reason, the aspects needed to be re-empowered. For some reason, Keeper Tear needed to come back. And in that regard, like if you just focus on the major beats, you're like, okay, what exactly did we just do? And people say like Dragonflight is a filler expansion or a filler storyline. And in that regard, they're not wrong. Like it's not connected to what we've done so far. It might be in the future. Like we definitely know that an Iridacron is going to come back, and there's like the storyline with Zalotth to play in the War Within. But the overarching beats, like the whole bringing back the aspects, hasn't come into play quite yet. And will it? Only time is going to tell.
Why do you think that is, though? Like, do you think that's like let's move outside of just WoW lore directly, right? Deducer's gone. Metzen's back. Like, do you think some of these factors played into the fact that of what you're saying, where it felt like a filler expansion? Do you think they had more potential plans for like, yeah, let's explore the dragon thing for another 2-3 expansions, and then Metzen's like, nah, what the hell is this shit? I'm taking over. You know, like how do you feel about, like, do you think any of this stuff played into the kind of story beat change from Dragonflight to TWW?
I don't know. I can sit here and speculate. I've asked behind the scenes, like, was this the original thing that was planned? And the answer that I got was yes. But do they tell me the truth? I don't know. I don't know what their storyboards is and what their directions are. I can only explain and talk from a consumer point of view, like this is how it comes across to me. I don't know the inner workings, so I don't even want to speculate about it because I don't know. The idea of Metzen coming in, sweeping the table, and it's like, this is what we're going to do now, that's not the vibe I'm getting. From the interviews that I'm hearing from Metzen is that they were 10 months into development of the War Within when he showed up and he's like, hey, I want to join the party again. And then they started to spitball with him and he came up with like 2 more expansion ideas and they started to connect all of that. But they were already 10 months in development. That's quite extensive, right? So in that regard, I don't know. I really don't know. Does it have some role to play? I would be surprised if it didn't. Like if you're a lead narrative designer, I believe that was the user's position, like the guy that's supposed to lead the story when they don't come back to the office. Yeah, that's a change in the guards, a change in shift, and I imagine change in design philosophies. But again, keyword is imagine, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, to me, you know, it's interesting because like you're putting out detail, like you're educating me on stuff. I mean, you always educate me on this stuff because you know better than anyone with lore. But you know, I mean, you and I have done I don't know, 10 of these, right? 15 of these. I don't know. We've talked a lot of lore stuff, and I've never been more disconnected from WoW lore outside of like retiring from raiding and stuff like that than I have, because Shadowlands was just a complete checkout. BFA was already kind of like, yeah, you know, I think the snowball started rolling down the hill for me when we just mentioned it a moment ago, the Ashara into N'Zoth in like 2 patches done, right? That was like, I don't know how I feel about this. That should have been like an entire expansion for N'Zoth and Black Empire and all that kind of stuff. They didn't do that. Then Shadowlands started. The biggest, baddest villain ever known to the universe just got introduced in 1 expansion and killed. Kind of hard to, you know. So by that time, I was already kind of like checked out. Then Dragonflight came out. You know, for sure, there's definitely a bit of bias because I was kind of like, I'm burned out with WoW, blah, blah, blah. So it's hard for me to like focus. But it didn't seem like there's anything that gripping. I didn't find the opening cinema. I know for them, it's like, it's the start of a new arc. And, you know, we're going to focus on like domestic issues back on Azeroth and all this stuff. And, you know, I get it from that perspective. And, you know, the cinematic was kind of like, it was you know, CGI is always nice from Blizzard, but it wasn't anything like exciting when you compare that to like, I don't know, almost any of them, right? Like, I mean, BFA cinematic was crazy, right? You know, MOP cinematic was like playful but cool. Like this one just didn't really do anything outside of it's like, it's dragons. That's cool. So I felt like there was like nothing really exciting, nor did it build up to anything by the time I kind
you
of
still
stopped
talk about the
paying
dragon. Oh, I thought you already meant the War Within. Oh,
No,
okay,
no,
but it's
on
the dragon,
Dragonflight.
the climb in the tower one. Yeah,
Yes,
gotcha.
yes.
Okay,
The War Within, well, we'll move to the War Within in a bit. I just wanted to talk about Dragonflight and how you saw it, if it like led properly for you into the War Within. Like, did you feel like it was like a cohesive story, like leading into the War Within? Like,
No, not even
how
a
did
little.
we even get to this? Like, there is a tie with it, right? Isn't it something to do with Iridikron and Xal'atath at the end of Dragonflight that like started this whole thing?
Yeah, so for me at the time, like for me with Shadowlands, about halfway through it when they did the whole Elune reveal and they tried to connect Elune to the Burning Hotel Drasil, I checked out. I was like, okay, what is happening here? Still kept an eye on it. For me, it was more like a break, and I'll see if I'm gonna come back in, and I'm come back with Dragonflight on a very casual level, and most likely the War Within is gonna do the same thing. But I kept in, you know, it's been my story for the last 20 years that I've been invested in, so I like to keep up to date to what's happening.
Sure.
The connection to what's happening, not so much. Like the Shadowlands ended with Jailer defeated. You'll never know what's going to come next because not even the Jailer knows for sure what's going to come next. There's not even a joke. He does not know. He imagined something. And then the rift just closed because reasons. And then Dragonflight happens because there was this hidden land in the mist that activated because the world is healing. And now we have the Primal Incarnates that are new. We got the War of the Scaleborn that is new. And new does not mean bad, but new does mean, okay, development of story. And then they go into the War Within, where you definitely get the feeling like, okay, after Legion, they dropped the sword into the world, and it was placed there with a purpose, with like, you know, we got story beats that we want to tell. And they didn't exactly pan out the way that they wanted to, let's be fair. And it kind of feels, again, it's a feel thing, that they want to go back to when they left the story, the sword in Silphus, and they want to tell the story that they wanted to tell. At least certain beats in there. So now you got the whole what sword thing, we're going back there. The connections build up is, in Dragonflight, there is Iridikron, Primal Incarnate of Earth, and he is very similar to Deathwing, except in the past he was never connected to the Void. They then made him connected to the Void.
Wait, it's similar to Deathwing how?
Deathwing is the primal aspect of Earth, and Iridikron is also Earth. And
Okay.
they've done a pretty cool book, which is called War of the Scaleborn. This is like a war 20,000 years ago. Again, it's a book, right? Would be great, but okay. 20,000 years ago, we find out that these primal incarnates, they are not down with what the Titans have done. Because they're like, ew, order, how dare you? We are primal incarnates. We do not obey order. And the Titans and the dragon aspects are connected to order. And they're like, yeah, you will. Otherwise, we'll make you. So a whole war played out where the incarnates were like, no, we won't. And they were like, yeah, you will. And Iridikron was like this master schemer, very similar to Deathwing, except he was better because Deathwing had to cheat and use the Void to beat him. A whole storyline. Point being that they defeated those primal incarnates. Now, 20,000 years later, they come back, and we find out that Iridikron is in league with Zalotth, the big bad of the War Within and beyond. And he's working together with her. And he has this trinket, which some way, somehow, he knew was hidden underneath the ground by Deathwing. He picks up the trinket, and he uses the trinket to suck out the corruption of Galagrond. Galagrond was like this big old proto-dragon that was corrupted, like the big threat
one of the
that
OGs.
the aspects took on. Yeah. Sucks out the corruption, hands over the trinket to Zalotth, gives us the, okay, when the Titans come back, I'll be back and we'll finish this war. See ya. And that's basically the connection between Dragonflight and the War Within.
How do you feel about Xal'atath cooked as the mastermind up to this point? Mastermind / next Giga villain, etc.
It will very much depend on how it plays out, but so far I am very happy with her. Because she is... There's comparable to the Jailer, as in, okay, there's this big threat that's working in the background. However, the major difference is that the Jailer was given credit for everything, and Xal'atath so far has been given credit for moments. So, for example, you remember Ragnaros, right? Like in the Blackrock Mountain? The reason Ragnaros was there was thanks to Xal'atath. Or the Skardin in Grim Batol. The reason that they were there was thanks to Xal'atath. And we know this from Legion, where they had like these scrolls attached to the weapon. So we know that she played these parts in the story, and then you start to wonder, what else has she done? She is way more charismatic than a jailer. You don't have to guess what he's trying to say, not just because of the bass in his voice, but also because she actually tells a story instead of, haha, just wait for the next patch and you'll find out.
She's not a Disney villain as much.
Yeah. And you, at least it all comes down to taste in it. But me personally, I get pulled in with like, okay, you're giving me little teasers, little hints as what you're building up and what you're cooking. I'm down with it. But it also very much depends on execution because, I mean, spoilers for... You've done the entire War Within so far, right?
Yes.
All right.
Wait, one second. Just, if this is not obvious, chat, there will be very heavy... I saw somebody get really mad on Twitter at Wowhead about this the other day. There's going to be very heavy spoilers for The War Within. Like, we're basically going to be talking about everything that's happened and speculating for the next. So, if you don't want to see that, probably see you in like an hour or something. You've been warned. All right, go ahead.
Good show. So what we see in like the confrontation so far with Zalotth is that she's untouchable, and she can make Alleria crawl on the ground, and she can disarm her with a snap of her fingers. Nobody can touch her. And yet Alleria is able to reach the Dark Heart and break it open. Is Zalotth believing her own hype, or is Alleria getting better, right? And then it breaks open, and Zalotth yells the classic lines of "this changes nothing," and then poof, she goes away. And it's like, what? Okay, did we just deal with the War Within? Are we over? Like, what's happening next? And in that regard, it all depends on what's going to come next and what level is she on, what is Zalotth. But so far, the mysteries as to what she is and what she wants to accomplish definitely hooking me in, yeah.
Yeah, I think a pessimistic individual looks at Xal'atath and goes, they weren't planning this all along. They just kind of pieced it together last second. And I think a hopeful person or like not a pessimistic person says, wow, they've been cooking this, masterfully since Legion or whatever. Do you think, like, what do you think? Have they been truly, like, do you think 8 years ago in Legion they were going, this is going to be our villain in 8 years from now, we're cooking here? Or were they kind of like, okay, we need some like way to pull all of these different things together because we kind of messed up with Shadowlands and stuff, so I guess like Xal'atath kind of works, like let's explore that.
So this goes back to the idea of we're going to go back to the sword in Syllabus because the story that they tried to tell didn't work out.
Sure.
I think, again, I have no basis on this, but I think that they had certain story beats in mind. Think a master manipulator in the background that's been moving pieces, 20 years of storytelling Warcraft towards a certain destination. That can be a jailer if you do it poorly, which is, here's the jailer, we're not going to explain anything until the end, have fun. Or it could have been Xal'atath. We got some scrolls, we got some things booked in there, and we're building up towards the idea of this big old war between light and void. Were they cooking this 8 years later? I mean, there were definitely building blocks to build upon Xal'atath. Like, that's how they always done it. They tell a story, but they also build in little hooks that they can pull on in case they want to tell further story, right? So was it their intention 8 years ago? I have no idea, but was there possibility there? 100%. Because remember, in Battle for Azeroth, we released Zalotth from the Blade, and she literally tells us, we'll see each other again. See ya. Yeah, that is a building block. Same with Azjara that walks away from Nyalova for a full reason, but that is also a threat that they can pull on in the future. Like, that is something we can bring in. Yeah.
I'm very disappointed if we don't see Azjara again. This is like one of, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's probably one of the only, and especially in recent times that they're introducing like a new major villain that isn't based on OG Warcraft lore, right? Like the Jailer, I don't think had like original story and Arthas days in Warcraft 3 and stuff like that. I don't think Xal'atath did either, because they've kind of gone through a lot of the classic villains, right? Like we've gone through the Old Gods, we've gone through the Lich King, we've gone through Azjara, blah blah blah. So now it seems like they're starting to write new. Well, I mean, they started with the Jailer, didn't work out great, but they're kind of they're starting to kind of get into new villain writing and stuff. Do you agree with that? What do you think?
Well, that's I think you're right, but it's a matter of, and this is something that I've been trying to wrap my noodle around, which is where are they going to take this? Because right now they're building up this whole war between light and void, which is fine, which is then you're like, cool, we can do this with Zalotth and the light. But I would be very surprised if they close the door after these 3 expansions, that the final Titan is going to be the last one. So where do they want to go? Like, what do they want to do? And again, if we look at what they tried to do with the Shadowlands, which is introduce something beyond what we knew. So what we have is like these cosmic forces. Like you said, we've expelled the well that is the Burning Legion. We've expelled the well that is the Old Gods. But what if there was something before that, right? Like the first ones. Again, it's a concept that I personally don't think is bad. It's just very poorly executed. It is a concept that could work if they do it well.
Well, we got some Void Lord stuff with Alleria too, didn't we?
Yes, correct. Yeah. So the Void Lords are the ones who send out like the Old Gods, and the idea is, as the name implies, that the first ones came even earlier, like a force behind a force that's woven the threads of the Warcraft universe and destiny of man and blah blah blah, all that Shadowlands goodness. Potentially, like that is breaking open where they're gonna go next, because otherwise you're just gonna end up in the same cycles over and over and over again.
Burning
I don't
Legion
know.
3.0, let's go.
Exactly. Like, oh, here's the Burning Legion again. Here's the Old Gods again. I'm like, where do you want to take this storyline? Because at the same time, you can't. I mean, you can, but if you go too far away from the concepts that are known, you're going to alienate the audience that you have. Like people sometimes don't want change, and I can see this in Final Fantasy where people want to keep on partying with the Scions, and I can see this in WoW where people are like, "Don't kill off Khadgar. I like Khadgar. You're not allowed to kill off my favorites." And I'm like, yeah, but those tragedy moments, those big moments, nobody is untouchable. That makes it interesting for me.
See, I completely agree with you, and I think FF14 is really bad about this. And I think I said the same thing, and again, spoiler territory now, chat. I said you've obviously done everything right, Nobbel, story-wise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I said the same thing when Khadgar like died, quote unquote, at the beginning of the expansion. I was like, there's no. In my head, I was like, on stream, I was like, what? No way. In my head, I was like, there's no way he's dead, man. They don't. When was the last time they killed a major character in WoW, like Sorfang? And Sorfang was kind of like a Half-C and then Varian before that, right? Like it takes them like 8 years to be like, okay. I mean, I get it, right? You can't just axe characters off left and right, sure, but I don't know. I think they need like a bit of gravity to their actions, and I feel like when my feeling now, coming back and starting to pay attention to lore and stuff, and watching all the cinematics now and TWW and stuff, I get it. Part of what I'm going to say, the defense against this is that yes, they are like it's a PG game, PG company, whatever, yeah. But I can't help. It's tough for me to get into like an adult theme or mindset or like the gravity of a situation when the way a lot of things are presented are very childish, like. The scene where Alleria gets away from Xal'atath, the Zalato's picture, everyone like, and she conjures up like a gut punch to her, and I'm like, what the hell is this? This is like the most childish shit I've ever seen, and then like jumps off. And it's very like Disney, Hollywoody to me, and I'm like, it's kind of hard for me to get into like Xal'atath is this mastermind, super evil, and then like Alleria's like, and I'm like, hey, I don't know, dude.
I had to freeze frame it. She actually punches the Dark Heart, which I didn't realize. And I was like, oh, maybe
the amulet
made like a fracture, and then with an arrow, she finishes the job. I was like, huh. But yeah, that's presentation, I suppose, the gravitas of it. But then again, like, how did you feel when a variant got disenchanted, for example?
That was cool, but I feel like we haven't had stuff like that in a long time. I feel like
it's not the limitations of the game, it's just the way that they presented it, I suppose.
Yeah, because, and everybody memes around, like, which is why I was looking for that cinematic earlier. We don't have to watch it because we've kind of already talked about it, but like that's why I was like looking around for the
coming together as a family, yeah.
Yeah, like, like and like we can do this together, like at the end of the Amir Drusil or whatever it was. Like, I don't know, man. Like, I get it. Like, they can't have, like, blood and guts everywhere and stuff. But, like, Varian was a great example of a way that they can present, like, an emotional, as you said, intense story beat death that isn't childish, but isn't, like, necessarily, like, filled with gore and that kind of stuff and, like, stabbing a sword through someone's chest and whatever, right? And I just feel like you don't get that kind of stuff these days anymore.
But then I think about the War Within intro one with Anduin, where I'm like,
yeah,
it's a deep emotional moment,
sure.
And of course not going to be for everybody, as you mentioned. Like this is one of the first times actually trying this. If you compare this cutscene to previous ones, where it's like fighting a battle and whatnot, this is very emotional. But man, the emotions on his face and the voice acting and the way the story is presented is insane to me. So well done.
Sure, yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with that. The cinematic was very good. I think the cinematic was a letdown for people that were expecting something like pog hype action, right? Because it was a very slow emotional thing. I thought it was really good. It was really well done. And just like, I mean, it's Blizzard, right? So our department carries like, you know, just like all their cinematics, the CGI was amazing. Everything was like incredibly well done. The story beats of it were really emotional and cool too. But I mean, where else have we seen that in game except for that cinematic then? TWW, Dragonflight, Shadowlands. In Shadowlands, I think the only, for me, that I can remember at least, the only time I got like a touching story beat was the short with Uther and Arthas for Bastion.
Oh, right. Yeah.
That was the only time I was like, wow, that was badass, you know? And that was, once again, calling back on like old lore, so. But anyways, yeah, like the Khadgar thing, like Khadgar dies and he comes back and it's just like, I don't know. It was also, was it not predictable to you that Khadgar would come back and like Anduin gets his light back a bit? And I was like, oh, I didn't see this coming. Really?
Okay, so, like Khadgar not dead, I was okay, I down with. On the beta, we had like a cutscene where they were like, okay, to take a moment to remember Khadgar's like, oh snap. Khadgar actually bites the dust. We're doing Legion style intro, Dalaran destroyed, Khadgar gone. Sick, I'm on board.
No, he just respect to Rhett.
Yes. So then, sorry, the patch rolls around, and as they do it one day earlier on the US side. So of course YouTube is full of thumbnails that I'm like, oh, it's so annoying. So I see a thumbnail and I'm spoiled. I'm like, oh, there's something happening with Khadgar. I'm like, okay. But then the cutscene plays and I'm like, oh, I did not see this happening. Khadgar is out of the crystals. Like, okay, I could see that one coming. And then he dies. And I was like, oh, are you actually giving us a proper death? Because everybody's speculating that he isn't dead. And then Anduin comes in and he resurrects him. I'm like, oh, I didn't get that one. And somebody asked in the chat, like, is that truly Khadgar or is that Zalotth in disguise? And now Zalotth in disguise, the whole Dreadlord thing can always happen, right? Zalotth can literally be anyone. The reason why I'm like, let's not, is because they have now connected Anduin's connection to the light to this Khadgar moment. Imagine if he resurrected Zalotth all along. It would be hilarious and might push him off the edge, like, oh my god, I reconnected to the light to resurrect Zalotth.
That would be more badass than Khadgar. Like, I get it. I get what you're saying, but that would be a super, like, five-head gotcha moment, I think. Because that would add some real depth and adult writing to Anduin later, rather than, like, I got my light back, we're good. Like, further adult writing.
Yeah. Like I said, I think that they've taken the time for Anduin to reconnect. So for me, like I said, it all comes down to taste, ain't it? And I was really worried about the Anduin storyline, and so far they're doing it well because, you know, it's way heavier topics than what Blizzard normally deals with.
Sure.
And especially when it comes to like the trauma storyline, to see, you know, small steps, what do I do, one step at a time, slowly but surely reconnecting. I thought it was pretty cool done. Visually, I would say like I would have wanted more than just putting his hand on. There's a little bit of a glow. I would like, you know, the whole bells and whistles, like like how we resurrect, you know,
like BFA cinematic kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Because people still think that Anduin in the Battle for Azeroth cutscene does like an AoE res. And then in the Chronicles, they say that is an AoE heal. But here he does a res. And I'm like, did he? I don't know. But same way that when Alleria shoots at Xal'atath during the meeting, everybody's like, why are you so dumb? Why would you shoot at the queen in the middle of her speech? And it's like, you forget that she is currently constantly being assaulted by the Whispers of the Void. And I would like them to be more direct about it, I suppose, because sometimes it just doesn't land with people.
I honestly said the same thing. It didn't land with me. I was like, why would she just like, isn't she supposed to be like smart about this? Why would she just, you know, blow their cover and shoot at the queen because she gets like emo?
Yeah, well, imagine that there's like voices in her head going, kill, 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 you are worthless, you must kill, you let Dalaran be destroyed, kill them now.
Isn't that normal? I have those every morning, but I just don't cave
damn, all right. But the Khadgar being back thing, it's a matter of implementation. And I said this during beta times as well, where people were upset about Khadgar's death, and I'm like, it all depends on implementation and how they do it. Killing for the sake of killing, I'm not down with, but if it's like a variant death, yes, that is definitely story progression.
Do you think a major character should or is on pace to die this expansion? I mean, obviously,
Turellian. I don't know if you would consider him a major character, but I think Turellian is going to play.
Ish, kind of, right? I think he's going to play a bigger role, yeah.
Yeah, because I think it's going to like what my hope is, and I'm wondering if it's like a foolish hope, but my hope is that what we're seeing so far is we're pulling a Legion, right? It all starts off very death and destruction, and oh my god, the stakes are high, and then we just start mowing down whatever they throw in front of us, and we're doing it again. We start off with Dalaran destroyed, Khadgar dead, but then we're just mowing everything down. And what I'm hoping is that they're going to take the opportunity that they now have a free expansion lineup that everybody knows, that what we're doing right now does not mean anything, and that near the end of this one, Xal'atath goes, oh, y'all thought you're having a wonderful adventure, well, by the way, Trellian is dead, so you're going to fall to the void. Oh, you thought you were reconnected to the light and dealing with this? Nah. You're going to fall. You're going to fall. You're going to fall. All your wars within. I was just toying with you, planning with you, playing with you, and the world is now dipped in darkness. Let's add a little time skip to it. 20 years later, good luck. Here's your midnight expansion. That is my hope.
That we waste our time for 2 years. Basically.
I mean, you still have to overcome and try to be the hero, right?
Yeah.
It's not wasted time if you enjoy what you're doing.
Okay, Trekkie. So
I mean, define, because there's also the comment like playing through expansions that mean nothing, but define meaning nothing. Isn't it the road that you take that is the worth it? Because at the end of the day, you're gonna win. Your character's not gonna be deleted. Does that mean it means nothing?
I was actually just trolling. Because so
I was also comment in chat for that. It's a genuine question. Yeah.
I don't think it's a waste of time. Like the way I see it right now, it's actually kind of funny. Well, the way I see it at least is it's almost like not literally this moment, but in recent times it's almost a mirror situation to what's happening with Final Fantasy XIV, right? They just finished their massive arc with Endwalker, right? Something that they built up arguably for years and years and years. It was well delivered. Everyone loved Shadowbringers. Most people like Endwalker, blah, blah, blah. WoW, at least self-claimed, or at least that's what Denuser said. The Jailer was the end of that arc, right? WoW was reaching the end of its big arc with the Jailer, and it's time for domestic duties back on Azeroth, and Dragonflight's launching, and it's the beginning of the arc. Let's just say, for argument's sake, Dragonflight was a bit of a filler expansion in some people's eyes, and the true arc, in my eyes, is now beginning. So you can't have, just like people are complaining about, there's a lot of complaints about the FF14 new expansion kind of falling a bit flat. Obviously, from some people, it was because you can't, they expect to ride a high from Shadowbringers every expansion. You're not going to have that. Same thing with WoW, right? You can't just start a new expansion and it's just constant dopamine hit. You have to have time to develop characters and story. So even if what you're saying happens, and by the end of this expansion we have, it's all Xal'atath's haha, you're all idiots. I was playing you for a fool for the past 2 years, a year and a half, whatever. It shouldn't be wasted, because during that time there could be extremely important story building elements and blocks. Because at some point this roller coaster needs to reach its peak and then come down, right? Probably sometime towards the end of next expansion, some shit's going to get crazy, right? And somehow it needs to cap off by the end of their trilogy. That's the way I see it, with Illidan coming back, of course.
The comparison that you make, though, 100% this is inspired by Final Fantasy, and this is also why we're seeing a shift in WoW where they focus on the storytelling. They've noticed
You think so?
clearly... Oh, I would be very surprised if not the case. They've noticed clearly that people are willing to play an MMORPG for the story. That is why we're now seeing more story elements added, more ways of catching up on the story. However, Final Fantasy and WoW are not the same thing. Yes, they're MMORPGs, but completely different way of designing the game. And in WoW, it's always been the game first, gameplay first, story more like a cherry on top. And personally, I've always found it fine. That's what WoW's strength is. And now what I'm hoping is that they're going to, my optimistic self says, okay, we're going to move to the part where it's going to be both, right? Cool storyline and gameplay on the same level. But the difficulty is that over the years, they've not exactly considered an overarching storyline. You could pretend to be Final Fantasy as much as you like. The stories are connected with the ending, but overall, they're more self-contained expansions. And then over time, they're ripped apart as content is removed and whatnot. Currently, people ask, I want to experience the story in WoW. How do I begin? And I'm you can't do that in WoW, right? Whereas in Final Fantasy...
You start ARR.
Yeah, you start ARR 600 hours later, and you might have finished Endwalker, and you got the complete experience. And that on its own also has the difficulty of now you need to convince someone to play 600 hours of Final Fantasy.
Yeah.
But at least they do get the full story. And this whole arc thing is difficult. You're retroactively going to try to wrap it up, and they failed with the Jailer, as you said. They tried to connect the Jailer to it, and in one expansion, good luck, right?
There's no depth at all.
There's no depth. There's no, where did this guy come from? He did these things, totally trust us. And in Xal'atath, again, they're doing it with scrolls and whatnot, but it's slower. It's built up over time. You get to believe like this character. There are beings like a Locust Walker from Karesh, who is like, oh yeah, we know about Xal'atath. You remember what happened to Karesh with Dimensius, and this is Burning Crusade lore. Yeah, she was connected to that. And it's like, oh. So you're slowly introducing us to the idea of, okay, what is Xal'atath? What is she up to? And what has she been doing in the background? But again, it's happening retroactively. And I'm curious if it's the right call or not to try and be like, yeah, we're wrapping up 20 years of storytelling, even though during development, it seems to be more like, okay, we think 2 to 4 years in advance, right? Is a difference there.
Yeah. So you think Turalyon probably bites the dust. Let's talk about Alleria for a bit. Because I'm a little out. I personally am a little out to lunch with Alleria's, let's say, history, right? I obviously know about her now because she's here, front and center. Another Windrunner sister, my favorite. We didn't have enough of that in the past. So what? I mean, I saw like a bit of her lore history with obviously the short that they put out with Turalyon, listening to the Void Whispers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Do you want to talk a bit about her and like her leading into like her as a major character into this expansion? Why she's so pissed at Xal'atath, why she hates the Void so much, and honestly, where you think like what her role in the story is going to be beyond this point.
Okay. If you're curious, there is a audio drama on YouTube called 1,000 Year War.
Okay.
It's official, done by World of Warcraft. It's like 3 episodes. They're amazing. They're so cool. And it basically explains the history of Alleria and Turalyon. It's a need to know basis. I'm surprised that they didn't do like a re-release of it, because it basically explains her background, and it's a wonderful listen. In essence, Alleria and Turalyon, they are old school heroes of the Alliance. They were part of the Alliance of Lordaeron all the way back when the Dark Portal opened up for the first time, right? So they stood there shoulder to shoulder fighting against the Orcish hordes. Then the horde came back, the Dark Portal reopened, and they made the call like, we need to step through because we need to stop them from going to different planets to bring the same damage to Azeroth as they've done to others. We're going to make the sacrificial play. The Sons of Lothar, Khadgar, Kurdran, Dunoff, Alleria, Turalyon, the statues in front of Stormwind. Those people stepped through the Dark Portal, and they made the play. They closed the Dark Portal on Draenor's side, and we had no idea if they were alive or not. So then, for many years, the Dark Portal was closed until the Burning Crusade, where Illidan goes, oh, for 10,000 years, banished from my own homelands, blah, 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 now you dare to enter my domain. We went into Outlands, where these heroes were supposed to be, and we met Khadgar, we met Kurdran, we met Dunoff. Only Alleria and Turalyon were nowhere to be found. Even their son, Arator, he was there looking for his parents. He had this vision about his dad who was dying on a planet, and no matter how hard he tried, he could not make the words that his dad was trying to say, but he could tell, like, Daddy is dying, I need to find my parents. But nope, no Alleria, no Turalyon. Not until Warlords of Draenor. Warlords of Draenor, that many expansions, when we started to get, like, oh, they remember Alleria and Turalyon. There was the garrison. In the garrison, there was the inn, and in the inn, rando NPCs would show up with quests. One of them had you go into the Shadow Moon burial grounds and look for, like, an arrow, look for some evidence on Alleria. You brought it back, and they were like, oh my god, you actually found some evidence on Alleria. That's so cool.
777,777.
Guys, why are you guys being annoying during this? I'm going to turn alerts off for now.
They love you.
But thank you,
Trojan Donkey, thank you very much for the 77.
I mean, to be fair, it makes sense. It was the 77. All right, one second. I'm going to turn the alerts off, just so we're not interrupting the combo. Trojan, welcome back.
And accent is very Dutch, as Dutch as they come.
Very, very
Dutch. Draenor, we got a hint. Then with Legion, they actually came back. And as I said, like, the audio drama explained a lot on what they happened. So what happened was, when they closed the Dark Portal, they were approached by aliens from space, the Army of the Light. You might remember that shiny golden dreadlord, Lofrection, from the Paladin Order Hall?
Yes, I do.
He was like, hey, want to join our army? And they were like, I don't know. And he was like, well, if you don't, then your son is going to die. And they were like, well, guess we have to. So they joined. And Turalyon met Zera, this Naru. Now, Alleria is already, they're an elf, so they're long-lived. But Turalyon is only a human. And in the Twisted Nether, time doesn't really work the same as it does in Azeroth. So for us, they were gone for like 30 years. For them, it was thousands. So Turalyon has been kind of made, immortal by the blessing of the lights. And he had a wonderful time with the Army of the Light. As you imagine, he's a paladin. He's like, yay, I can wield the lights. And Alleria, for a while, tried to do the same. And she was like, the light kind of sucks. The light doesn't do it for me. And she discovered that if she uses the void, she can perma-kill demons. And she was like, score, I'm going to use the void. But nah. Zara was like, no, that's naughty. And Trellian was like, oh, man, I'd rather die than see you use the void. And she was like, what the? I'm just trying to help. And she's like, well, guess I'm not using the void. But then, at some point, she learns from Lofrexion that the Locust Walker exists. And the Locust Walker is like this ethereal that's really good at wielding the void. And Alleria was like, that's going to be my mentor. That's going to be my student. She takes like 500 years to find him because she wants to be able to take care of the demons, win this war, and secure the future for her family, right? That is her whole deal. She is the one who makes the sacrificial play for the greater good, right? So she finds the Locust Walker, convinces him to be taught by him. And she becomes really good at it, and almost does she dip completely into the void and become the uber void wielder that she was meant to be. Only then she receives a vision that Trellian is in trouble. And I don't know if you've ever seen Avatar: The Last Airbender, but at that point, you drop everything, you go save your loved one. Her training wasn't complete quite yet, but she didn't care. So she goes to Trellian, she saves him, and then Zera shows up, and Zera was the one who nearly converted Illidan, and then Illidan was like, I am my scars! Well, that Naru was really upset with Alleria, and it's like, what have you done? And so Lofrexion and Trellian, they beg Zera not to kill Alleria, and so she's imprisoned. And then we showed up in Legion, and we party hardy together. And we saw Alleria eat some more Void, and then eat like a Naru, and become really good at wielding the Void. And the reason why she hates Xal'atath is because Xal'atath tries to murder everybody. And Alleria does not like that. It's really weird. No, sorry. Like, Alleria is asked by Khadgar, her bestest buddy from the days of the Sons of Lothar, like, hey, you're really good at the Voids. There's something happening with, like, this dark heart and this Void creature. Can you go and investigate? And Alleria finds out about Xal'atath. She learns from her master, from the Locust Walker, like, oh, yeah, Xal'atath, the Mentions to all devouring. She's the reason why we're ethereals. And she's like, oh, no, do you think she wants to eat our planet, too? And he's like, yeah, I think she's trying to bring Dementius. It's like, oh, no, that's not good. So she tries to stop Xal'atath.
Void Lord? Was that the Void Lord name?
Yeah. So
okay.
This is a small retcon. In the Burning Crusade, there was a quest line where you joined the Ethereals and you took care of Dementius, right? And a lot of creatures back then were called Void Lords as well. If you open up the dungeon journal and you check like Akunai Crypts, there's literally like an enslaved Void Lord. But they've changed it a little bit. Like, you're not going to tell me that those are the beings who shut out the old gods, right? That doesn't make any sense. So I think that it is just a very small bit of them that they were able to manifest. Whereas the real thing is still out there, in the same case with Dementius. It is a small retcon, because the questline does say, like, oh, the Ethereals, like, millions of them are celebrating your victory, but whatever. So Karesh and the Ethereals and Dementius are all waiting. And that's kind of Alleria's storyline up to this point, where it's very much about... she is willing to do whatever it takes to get the job done. Similar to a different Windrunner that we know. And... to the question, like, what do I think is going to happen to her in the future? So far, her anchors, there's the cutscene in Azj-Kahet where she thinks back to, like, a Locust Walker and Trellian and Anduin and all that. So far, her anchors are the ones that are keeping her away from being completely taken over by the Void. Because currently, she's just constantly hearing the whispers of the Void, and she's holding it under control. But what if those anchors fall away? What if the vision of her son Arator, Trellian actually dying, what if that happens, right? Would she still be able to hold off the Void, or would she fall into darkness? And then we have the Nightborn Allied Race questline, where Alleria goes back home to the Sunwell, and she accidentally unleashes a whole bunch of Void at the Sunwell. We know that in the expansion 2, we're going to be dealing with, like, the elves coming back together. We're going to go back to the olden lands, maybe like a Quel'Thalas revamp. So what if the Sunwell is going to play a part in that regard? What if Alleria, who accidentally unleashed the Void at the Sunwell, what would happen if she goes there to do it on purpose, right? But that is, again, complete speculation.
Good. Now I know about Alleria. In depth. Yeah, even from a rating perspective, I can totally see a Alleria false corruption 7th of 9 boss of the raid. You gotta smack it out of her to bring her back. You know, from the edge of the Void.
Sylvanas is totally going to bring her back. Just giving you a heads up. Sylvanas is going to be the one to
No way. You think Sylvanas is coming back? No.
Yeah.
Like
I would personally be very upset, but yeah, I think it does.
Oh, not like this. Isn't she, like, imprisoned to the Maw forever now?
Yeah, until she's done community service. Like, once she is set, like, the final soul free, she's free to go, right? That is her punishment. So imagine that Azeroth is plunged in darkness. She is chilling in the maw, so she's not affected. She peeks out and she's like, huh, that's weird. I didn't know Azeroth was so dark. And then she flies back in and she's like, what happened here?
Mm.
And then she, who has also dealt with the darkness in her heart, can bring her sister back to the light, redeeming her for what she did to Anduin.
I hate it, dude.
Yeah, me too, but I could see it happen.
Wait, what were the specifics of Sylvanas' community service? What did she have to do with the souls in the maw?
So, in essence, there were like billions of souls sent to the maw unjustly because, together with the jailer, they broke like the arbiter. And her punishment has been that the maw needs to be emptied out. She needs to send all those souls back to the arbiter, and once that's done, she can go.
What if Alleria, like, quasi dies, and she's the last soul in the maw that needs to get sorted, and it's Sylvanas that deals with it, and somehow brings her back from there? Disgusting.
Sylvanas the vote, yeah. I mean, it's all, at the end of the day, it's all speculation. Like, we don't know what the future's going to bring. They're definitely cooking up some storylines. But
we don't know Illidan's coming back, apparently.
Sorry?
We don't know Illidan's coming back, no? Didn't Metzen say he is?
I mean, Metzen said you're not prepared for what is to come, and people took that as, oh, it's talking directly to me. Illidan is coming back. Let's go. Which could be a thing, but at the same time, we already knew that the Titans were going to come back, and that's where we left Illidan. So
yeah, I was going to say, like, there has to be. I mean, Illidan is basically just chilling with Sargeras in prison right now, right?
Yeah,
so
kicking him in the nuts.
So if Sargeras comes back, there has to be, obviously, Big Daddy's coming back too.
Yeah, you'd imagine so. Yeah.
Huh. How's Sargeras?
I'm actually curious for you, by the way, for somebody who's been checked out. So for you, you've been experiencing the story of Dwarven so far. Does it not grab you at all?
No, I'm into it. I enjoy it more. Okay, so I think from a pure story perspective, it's certainly much more interesting than what was in Dragonflight. Even after talking to you now and catching up in Dragonflight felt like just a pit stop that, frankly, I didn't care for. That, to me, and again, this could be completely wrong, but from a consumer perspective, right? From a guy that played the game for 19, 20 years now, blah, 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 was very involved with it. The way I saw Dragonflight is that they were trying to start something new. Something, whether it be internal or story, didn't really, like, pan out. And halfway through the expansion, they're just like, okay, we're not going in the direction we intended to go into for the next 2 to 3 expansions, whether it's Metzen or anything like that. And we're going to now tie what we have together with some of the other stuff we have together, and we're going to tie it into a brand new start of an experience, which is the War Within. This is what it felt like to me. Whether it was literally partway through the expansion, which is not true because we know they work on expansions ahead of time, or whether during that developmental process they scrapped a bunch of stuff and they're like, okay, well, we're kind of like already half committed to Dragonflight, but we need to get out of it, so this is how we're going to get out of it and all this kind of stuff. Iridikron, Xal'atath, blah, blah, blah. Okay, here we are. The War Within. This is now the official, like, start line. This is what it felt like to me from a consumer perspective. And then from the purely naked eye, you couldn't help but feel like the way Metzen presented everything, Metzen's return, everything like that. Obviously, I'm not privy to the internals, but you couldn't help but feel like what you said earlier is that Metzen came in, he's like, what the hell is this shit? And just, like, swept the table off, and he's like, we're writing a trilogy right now.
For the record, I said the opposite, right? For the record, I said that people are saying that I'm so like, nah, he came in 10 months after development.
Sure, yeah, but that's what I'm saying. It's easy to feel the way you mentioned, even if it's not the truth, right?
Yeah.
So from like a writing perspective and the way, like, the intensity of, they obviously started the expansion with a bang, right? Like right away, Dalaran, Khadgar dead, and you're like, oh my god, what's going on? This is crazy. And then they've developed some nice arcs with Anduin. He's getting his mojo back. He's getting his light boner back, and everything's.
Why you gotta call it his light boner? No, come on, man.
because that's exactly what it is.
Uh,
Everything is presented in a story that I'm respectful of. You can't expect, like, I think if you're expecting any type of holy shit moment right now, I think that's unfair because we're at the basis building blocks of a new, arc, as we just discussed. I think we're not going to get anything. We're definitely going to have some probably cool story beats throughout this expansion, but I think in terms of holy crap moments, I don't think we're really going to get that till like next expansion, right? When like, or the end of this expansion, something to be like, here's the real, evil explosion of what's going on. So I'm enjoying it. What I don't enjoy as much, and I don't know if it's because, I haven't really thought about it because we talked about the variant thing. What I don't enjoy as much is I don't know if it's because it's changed over time or just I've now played a metric shit ton of other games and seen more adult themed games and storytelling and whatever. I don't know what it is or a combination of all of the above. It's very hard for me to like fully immerse myself in like a villainous adult situation like existed with Varian. We talked about this earlier, right? It doesn't have to be blood and guts and sword stabbing through the heart. Just like an epic like death or like more adult themes handled without like kind of this cartoony Disney vibe that I get from a lot of stuff. I feel like a few like they've gone a little too far into like a Hollywood-y Disney like epic lines moment direction, which they've always had. But like the Xal'atath scene where she like punches her gut, but you said she punches the trinket. Like that kind of stuff is just kind of, I don't know, man. I think it's a little childish for me. That's all. I appreciate the storytelling, but the way that cutscenes are presented, I think more often than not, I wasn't going into them expecting to like hate on them or something. That wasn't my goal. But I think every time I watched a lot of the cutscenes throughout the story so far, I like audibly like laughed or like scoffed. I'm like, come on, man. Like things like that, right?
Yeah.
Because there's just, I don't know. There's something that is just not the same intensity of storytelling as it was in Legion, or not storytelling, but the way it's presented. Like the cutscenes are not as, I don't know, man. You had like Sorafang death, Varian death. You had all these like crazy moments, and I just feel like we haven't gotten something as adult since then, right? Even Khadgar's death, I felt like he didn't actually die, right? Like immediately I was like, wow, this is intense. But in my mind, I was like, there's no way, just killed him off, man. They just don't do that anymore to me,
Now that you mentioned it, I wonder if the response to the burning of Teldrassil is also part of the reason why we don't see it, because I think that is like one of the last major oh my god moments that we've had.
Yeah, true. Yeah, that was a while ago. And that was definitely like a more adult thing. The thing is, this game has adult themes, so I don't think the game in essence has gone towards, I mean, sure, there's things that aren't adult that, people complain about on Twitter all the time, like there's a new back piece that are like fairy wings and they're like, not in my World of Warcraft, and like screw off with that. Like, who cares? Like, let people transmog and stuff how they want. But there's certainly adult themes even in quest lines that you do. I mean, you go massacre creatures and like different humanoids and different factions. Like, there's definitely adult things going on in the game, but I feel like they've taken their foot off the gas a bit with their main storyline presentation, from being more, I'll just use the word again, like adult or mature themed. Yeah, I don't know. So, summary, I enjoy the story. I wish they would be a little more gritty in their presentation, for lack of a better word.
I'm trying to like visualize how it could be better. I understand what you're trying to say 100%. Like, yes, it feels punchy and throwing out some epic lines and then we save the day and all that.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to put my finger on like what is the difference between Gul'dan, it says you're the king who died for nothing, and then for the Alliance. God, it was such a cool moment. But like I said, like the end of
Gul'dan, like with Gul'dan, you truly got the sense that he was just evil, like pure malicious evil, and that radiated through his actions, killing Varian, and like probably one of the most iconic scenes we've seen in World of Warcraft, right? And I don't know, I just feel like we're met with nothing but kind of like foo-foo one-liners and like
one-liners,
like Alleria like getting away, like in a real situation there, like Alleria honestly should have died or been imprisoned in reality, right? Like she easily could have with Xal'atath's power, but they're like, she's like, no, let me get my one-liner in and gut punch, and then I'll heroically jump off the edge against an army of Nerubians that are trying to capture us and like get away. You're like, okay, all right. Like it's just like constantly that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I write that off because again, it's with the mindset of what is to come.
Sure.
And it's like Alleria, you know, is there's a reason why Alleria is still around. There's a reason why Zalotth, and this is something that's definitely woven into the storyline. Like that happens in the end campaign as well. Alleria literally says, "Ha, we are at our strongest right now. She has given us the time to do this. She could have attacked any time, and she does it right now." So there's definitely the part about Zalotth pulling the strings.
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
I feel the presentation thing. Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, and again, see, your comment here was towards the storytelling, and I don't have an issue with that right now. I don't think it's poor storytelling at the moment, and I do think we're in the baby steps that, with all due respect, they'd have to try really hard to mess up the beginning of this story arc, right? But I think they're doing a good job with it, and you know, it has me interested to be like, oh, what's going on next? Oh, you know, so what's going to happen? You know, what is Xal'atath's next move? That's the big question on my mind, right? Because she's clearly the puppet master, like you're saying. So it's not anything to do with the actual story beats. You might have some agreements, some disagreements with some of them. It's just the way it is literally presented in their cutscenes. I find a little lacking.
Yeah, I also saw somebody mention about player choice and player agency and whatnot. But I think that's partially how WoW does his story. Like, we are not the major hero. They tried it during
We're not the
Legion
warrior
Battle for
flight,
Azeroth.
basically.
But we're just observers. We're just people in the background with goofy transmog on. I use those butterfly wings on my priestess as transmog for the cutscenes. So whenever somebody dies or something epic happens, my character just stands in the background like, yep, I'm here on holiday. It's great.
That always has been a weird disconnect if you think about it. It's not something that ever bothered me, but considering your player actions are what has saved Azeroth 500 times by now, the fact that you're just kind of like essentially non-existent, right, in the main lore, development of the lore is a little weird if you think about it, right?
They're not arc stories. Like, it's a different way of storytelling. Like in Final Fantasy, there is the hero of light, and they are what the world revolves around.
Sure.
Whereas for us, it's not our story. It's Jaina's story. It's Thrall's story. It's Anduin's story. And we are the hero that shows up and helps out. And yes, we've done amazing, great things, but more often than not, they give the credit to them, not us. Like I said, like Battle for Azeroth Legion was more the exception to the rule. And even then, there was feedback as in, okay, cool, I'm the High Lord, but so is Sloot, and so is that person, and that person, and that person. We're all High Lords now. We're all Maul Walkers now. Everybody's special, so nobody's special. So it didn't really work out in that regard either.
But it works out in Final Fantasy. Everyone's the Warrior of Light, right? I think it's just a different audience. Because everyone is the Warrior of Light, right? You're playing on that solo fantasy, and I think Final Fantasy has a market and a player base that is much more into story and single player story and committed to that than World of Warcraft, like by bounds.
100%.
By
100%. But that's also like from the ground up. That is how the story's been designed. Like it's your journey to go through. You are, who you are in that storyline, and as you said, in WoW, it's more like the flavor, the setting. It's more about the gameplay where people come into WoW for. And they can change it, and they're making steps to change it. They're doing a lot for Stay a While listens and click-throughs and more dialogue options and more cutscenes. And they definitely want to make the story more available to the player base.
Sure.
But the question is, does the player base want the story? And that's always been like chicken or the egg, ain't it? Like you can offer something to people. Like, does your audience know what you want before you give it to them? I would say.
You don't think the player base wants the WoW story?
Oh, I think that they do, but it's a matter of how do you present it, because this goes back into the whole quest dialogues and whatnot, and a bit more technical. And but in order to get the story of WoW from day one, is you read quest dialogue. But it's very muddied because your quest dialogue is not only used to convey the story, it's also to go and tell you to get 50 chicken butts and where you get those chicken butts. And not every quest box is equal in storytelling. So what happens is that you train your player base to go like, click, 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 click. I need to get my quest. I need to get my things on. It is gameplay versus storytelling. So now questing is in order to get levels. Dungeons are not just to get the storyline. It's also to get your gear as quickly as you can. So people have got to go fast. You can't listen to the dialogue or check around because you got to go, right? Raiding, same thing. That is where the finale, the highlight happens of the fight. And meanwhile, you're going, beware, dodging, interrupting. And you're like, you're not paying attention to the voice lines. No, you're paying attention to the gameplay. So in that regard, they're making changes to make that better. So there's now follower dungeons. There's now recaps of your quest log. There's now you can still click on your quest, but now the NPC will start talking to you and give you like a summary of what's happening. So they're making those steps. There's also going to be a solo raid option. So they're making steps to give it more availability, but they're only doing it just now. Like these are recent changes being added to the game. So that is more my mindset of, okay, they're making these changes in order for people to get into the story. And I had an interview recently where I asked them, like, okay, I love your idea of a solo raid where I can go in, I can get my story. Beautiful. Story mode raiding is the thing that I've always wanted. But they're only for the end boss, and with a week delay. Will you do more with it? Will we see the entire raid in a solo version? And they're like, we want to see how popular it is. They think it's going to be very popular, but they need to see, like, okay, what are the numbers, how it's going to do, and that's development time. So that is a matter of over time they're going to develop it. And I wonder how over time the player base is going to change. Because if you make the story more available, does that mean players will start to expect more story and will want more story? Is that how you train your player base? In a similar vein, how when they introduced the Dungeon Finder, people stopped talking to each other because you would just, queue with other people. In the same vein that I'm wondering, if you're going to add a solo raid mode, will people still be motivated to go into raiding and all that good stuff? So that's chicken and egg kind of thing.
That's an interesting topic. Because I mean that hits near and dear to me as well. With I mean, you're absolutely right. I can't remember the last time. Usually during beta cycles, right? I'll spend a bit of time like reading quest text, etc. But it has always been go, go, go. Questing is a means to a numerical end. Raiding is a means to a numerical end. And only through catch-up sessions like this, or checking out like a video from you or watching some trailers or something, do I then backtrack and catch up on lore. It's never in the moment. The only in the moment stuff I have, and probably a little more than usual because I'm not Race to World First stuff anymore, has been this launch, right? Like watching the cinematics, reacting to the cinematics and internalizing them. But even the questing now, it's just like click on dude, blue on my mini map, go to blue on mini map, click yellow dots, go back, right? And like you kind of get the general beats of what's going on with the quest line if there's a bit of a longer quest line, like the one with there's a quest line in Isle of Dorn where you're helping, I think that's like an earthen with he has like memory loss or something.
Yeah. Oh, that quest line is, they needed to voice act that one. Oh, yeah. My heart.
So I zoomed through that quest line like I usually do, go, go, go. But because the quest line was well presented and long enough, I still got all the general beats of the story, right? And I was like, oh, that's a sad story. I didn't spend any time reading the quest text, but you got what was going on, right? I don't think I wish there was more stories like that, right? Because a lot of the quests were just like, go kill 50 chicken butts, right? Yeah. A lot of filler stuff. And this, I don't know if you noticed, but at least in my opinion, this expansion, more than any other, all 11, except for, I guess, Classic. So let's say of all the other 9 expansions, barring this one, shortest main story, most amount of side quests in a zone I've ever seen.
100%.
By far.
On purpose.
Yes.
But as Chad is mentioning as well, with the delay, they actually got the time to explore the storyline. And I think that is 100% intentional. And I personally am very happy with these changes because they're trying to do best of both worlds. You don't want story, you just want to get the end game. MSQ doesn't take you that long. You got your end game done. Wow. Go play the game the way you want to.
Not really, right? And because if you do just main story, you end up at level 75, 76 at the end of Azj-Kahet. And then all of a sudden you have to go do, trust. Trust.
I mean, you need to level, but that is also done with like dells and dungeons and getting your gear on. It's more about not being stuck in an MSQ that's going to take you 50 hours to go through. Is more
sure after you've already max leveled. I got you.
Yeah. Like leveling is going to take some time, but even then leveling has been made incredibly short. I think it takes like 5 or 6 hours to reach max level, which is just chill.
Especially with the dungeon stuff, but yeah.
Insanely quick. So in that regard, like you want to reach endgame, go for it. But if you want the lore, there is a million different side stories you could check out. Honestly, good storylines you can find there. There's a Puppet Master quest line in Azj-Kahet, or indeed the memory loss one is beautifully done. It's one of my favorites that they've done recently. Hollowfall is chock full of interesting one. I don't know if you've done the orphan one with the girlie that wants to go kill the Cobus.
I've done every single quest.
That one is brilliant. So if you pay attention to it, it's there if you want to, but it's not necessary. Same with the Renown. They finally made the call to not put quest lines behind the Renown. Super smart. The rewards behind the Renown are very early level. So in the development side of things, they are definitely recognizing the mistakes of the past. Like compare this to, pick your covenant and now you're stuck with it. You want to change? Spend half a year of your life in order to change your covenant because we're not gonna let you do that. And it's like, I like this vision a lot better.
Yeah, no, I agree. There is a bit of renown locking for Isle of Dorn, by the way, for like one quest line.
Really?
Yes.
Which one?
Let's open up Breeny's handy add-on. It is it's called A Star of Dorn. Renown 14, Renown 21, Renown 10, locked, Renown 8. I don't know if you have my stream open right now, but
Yeah.
So that one is Renown locked a bit.
Oh, I don't see them in the Renown window. Interesting. Like I'm looking at Council of Dornogal at 10 and 14. It doesn't say that there's a quest. It says show must go on.
Halifal and Azj-Kahet apparently have Renown quests locked too, says Breeny, the guy who made this add-on.
Oh, okay.
There's also some time.
Oh, then I stand corrected.
Yeah, there's a couple of. There's not a massive amount, but there are some. And there's a bit of time gating with some of the Halifal ones too.
Oh no, I'm not gonna grind Renown after that. No, I'm not gonna do that.
Yeah, you are. Speaking of which, I'm check my world quest.
No, I'm looking at the Renown window, and that's where my confusion comes from because I don't see an actual quest line in the Renown window. But if it's there, then it's there. There's also a weekly quest in Hollowfall, which for the Seizoen achievement.
Yes.
Mm.
Yeah, I finished that one.
That's interesting.
That's the only one reset. Yeah, there's a couple. It's not a terribly huge amount.
But either way, long story short, I do recognize that they're making improvements when it comes to this. And I'm curious how that's going to evolve the player base and maybe change the expectations as to what people want out of WoW. Because, as you said, right now, it's very much a gameplay-focused, gotta go fast. Could we get an audience that's actually, like, you've always been into the story, up to Shadowlands. Oh, Shadowlands. But could more people be invested in and be pulled in to be like, go check it out?
I think if that change happens, it's going to take a very long time, right? Because you're going for a critical, like, either mindset swap to a player base that's been doing this for 20 years, or you're trying to capture a new audience that's into story, like getting the FF people over, as an example, to attract them with that story. And to do that, I mean, I got pulled into FF, for instance, because everyone's like, man, the story's crazy. I played like Endwalker. Endwalker was coming out, right, in a few months, and I was like, I guess I'll do it. They're like, oh, the story's crazy, you got to do this. I think for that to happen with WoW, you're gonna have to see the results first for new players to be attracted to it. Like, I think we're gonna have to reach the end of this 3 expansion arc. Have it be good, have it be something that people loud and talk about, and then have people be like, oh man, everyone's like hyping, like maybe I should go check it out. Like, what's going on with the story in World of Warcraft? And that's gonna take a while to cook if it does, right?
And the legacy of Shadowlands, like even to this day, like 4 years ago, and still almost every single stream that I do, we discuss the effects of the Shadowlands. It's insane, as well as and I'll hold on to this. Shadowlands did not fail because of the story. It failed because of gameplay. Story was just the second hit. It was the gameplay that got people to leave the game for. Yeah.
What do you think was so? Oh, because the Covenants.
Yeah.
Covenant specifically. Yeah. Yeah, fair. How do you think, wait, hold up. Let's back up a second. I don't want to like reopen up, but I wanted to watch 2 cinematics with you. I wanted to watch,
romantic.
I wanted to watch the Rule 30. No, I'm just kidding. I wanted to watch because we mentioned it 5 times, and I should have done it while we were talking about it, and then we can move on to the next topic. The Azj-Kahet scene with Alleria, where they narrowly escape, and the recent one with Anduin, because you mentioned that one a few times as well, with Anduin getting his light back. And then we can power up a bit about that for a second. Let me get these. They should be on.
There's circle actually in Dornogal. Are people doing circles yet or not?
Yeah, there is.
Ah, snap. Okay.
Kind of this middle area, right?
All right.
I'd say that's the main area for a circle.
Yeah, no more circles in Dalaran. Aww.
Somebody has the video on hand. Let me know. Otherwise, I'll look it up right now. Thought I had it, but I don't.
What are you looking for? Sorry.
The gut punch one.
Ew. Azj-Kahet. Yeah, this one.
You got it?
Yeah. We have a timestamp though, because they put two together.
I think I got it.
All right.
Maybe. Yes. It's right here. Okay.
Cool.
Ready? Oh God, what is this transmog? I'm already offended.
Oh, mine is worse.
I'm still wearing like questing green, so I guess shouldn't be one to talk. That part's cool. That part's well done.
I've seen you, Windrunner. Always alone. Pushing everyone away to embrace the hunt. Just like the monster you pretend not to be.
You're the only monster here.
Am I? You've slain hundreds to find me. Was that really all for Khadgar? Or is it just your nature to destroy? Come, Alleria.
The dark side.
Embrace who you truly are.
No kiss.
Just thinking of something.
Alleria. Alleria. Alleria.
I know who I am.
Run all you like. I'm coming for all of you.
Mother is muttering.
So, like, okay, so see, my beef with that was it had some cool moments with Xal'atath clearly being like, bro, I'm way stronger than you. Boom, bow gone. You know, like, that was a neat moment. The flashes to different people screaming her name, that was a neat moment. But, like the gut punch, clearly it was Xal'atath's intent, in my opinion. I know you say she's the puppet master, and she is the puppet master, but clear, like, at the end, she literally sent two little Nerubians to go and capture her, right? You're telling me that entire army couldn't capture Alleria, just chilling there and talking the whole time? And then, like, the gut punch was a little Disney, I know who I am, right? Like, that to me was just, like, it's too playful for the gravity of the situation, I guess, is where I'm going with it. So to me, it felt like a little, like, corny, I guess. The end of it. So as I said, for me that was an example of I actually like where the story's going. I'm curious to see more. I'm curious to see Zal'atath's intentions. But those kind of beats to me are kind of like make my eyes roll a bit, right? And that's where I rein it back and I go, this is a rated T for teen game. It is what it is. It's never gonna get. But then I say that, and then you countered with correctly. Well, remember the Varian death, right? Not that Alleria should die here right now is what I'm saying, but like they can certainly present a situation that isn't as like, you know.
Yeah, but it's a
juvenile.
matter of it's a matter of dialogue, and it's a matter of they want to get certain story beats across. And as you mentioned, like, couldn't the army capture her? Yeah, but Xal'atath, that's the whole idea. Like, they could capture her whenever. Which, you know, that doesn't mean that they don't try to kill us. Like, Xal'atath has 100 million plans in mind that they do send out the Nerubians to attack. But I think it's also the callback to Alleria. There was like
Made a
the
difference here.
cutscene where Xal'atath is like, I know your loneliness and whatnot. And Alleria has been isolating herself. She's been diving deeper into the void. So when she does the whole callback to those voices in her mind, like her anchors, and she's like, I know who I am. I'm not going to fall to your darkness. It's about the play between them. And while I guess the dialogue could be smoother, like better lines instead of just one-liners thrown at each other. Yeah, you've killed a lot, so you're bad. Everybody in WoW kills a lot. I mean, basically, it's the same thing that Sylvanas, because I was just rewatching. I was like, I thought about it as well. It's the same thing that Sylvanas throws at Anduin in Battle for Azeroth, where she tells him like, you speak about peace, but you're quick enough to make your blade bloody, and it's like, yeah, but Sylvanas, you started a war. What do you mean? What are you talking about? And here it's again like Xal'atath is like, oh, you know, I'm a monster, but you kill too. Is it all for Khadgar, or is it just who you are? And it's like, what are you talking about? Yeah, she's actively.
I mean, she's trying to get in her head, clearly, right? To like mess with her and
100%. Yeah. Yeah, and that's the same. Again, the same vein about why did she shoot at the queen? Yeah, it's 100% mind games. It's emotional, but apparently it doesn't come across properly. What is going on in that regard? And that's presentation.
1 second. Why is this like loading? So there we go. Thank you, Spencer. All right, hold that thought. Then let's watch this one too.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, somebody asked earlier if I'm using Edge. Yes, I'm using Edge.
You know, Alleria, you mortals are the most wrathful creatures in existence. I've watched you break worlds, overthrow gods. Even the realm of death couldn't hold you. Your hunger for violence is insatiable. You lured us here, unleashed us upon the Nerubians, all to fuel the Black Blood's power. My power. This stops now. Your determination delights me. But I have risen from the ashes of countless empires. I have survived ordeals you cannot comprehend. You cannot kill me. I'm not aiming at you. This changes nothing! Khadgar! Oh no. No. I heard your voice. This can't be.
You did well. I knew you would stop her.
Stay with me, Khadgar. Don't let go.
Khadgar. No.
Khadgar. Did they just like forget that like 6 classes of res in this game? They could have just brought any of us over to Khadgar's body and saved him.
Yeah, just bring him back as a zombie, turn him into one of the knights, you know, easy.
Oh man, that'd be cool. So
I love that cutscene, man. Oh
yeah, that cutscene's great, right? But so my gripe with that wasn't the end. The end was cool. I agree with what you said earlier, though. The Anduin part could have been a little flashier. Although, on the contrary, it also makes sense, right? Because he's only kind of like barely getting it back now, right? This was the beginning of it, so maybe that's why we didn't see like a full like explosion of light and, you know, all this crazy stuff. That was cool. My beef again with kind of like the meh of it was the beginning. Xal'atath in the previous scene that we just watched just like snapped her bow out of her hands. So she let her load up an entire arrow and shoot on her during the cutscene, and then was like surprised that she got hit.
She was a little bit busy.
She was. I see. Like, to me, it's like first they portray Xal'atath as this like insanely OP figure, right? Alleria can't even get near her. Ha ha ha. Bow. See ya. And then in this scene, all of a sudden, like, what, she just like loses her mastermind ability, her clairvoyance. Like, she lets her most important piece that she has on her, lets her get a clear shot to shatter her trinket, right? To free Khadgar, like, during this entire cutscene, and she's like, oh no, screw you, and then leaves, right? It's a little, yeah, to me, right?
I will say, like, okay, are you believing your own hype? But at the same time, as you just explained, every single time that Alleria has confronted Zalotth, she has been doing nothing but crawling on the ground. Why would Zalotth fear an Alleria? She shouldn't. In the middle of sucking out the powers from Beladar, so her hand's a little bit tied, she's like, you can shoot me, you're not going to kill me. And Alleria's like, I'm not going to shoot you. I, on my end, have gotten more to terms with where I am. I'm more clairvoyant in my mind, I'm more stable, I'm more anchored, I'm not, you know, I'm more control of the void. And Alleria is a prodigy void wielder. Like, that is why she's such a powerhouse against Zalotth. And she's like, I'm not aiming for you, I'm aiming for the little trinket that you got there. So the punch that she did earlier, where I didn't catch it just a moment ago, but I think she actually fractures the Dark Heart when she punches Zalotth, plays upon the idea of, okay, a little crack's been made. So you both have a Xal'atath that started to believe her own hype, like I am untouchable, and you got an Alleria that's able to crack the Dark Heart. And at the end of the day, there's also the part about, yeah, this needs to happen, right? Xal'atath can't be untouchable, and she isn't, because we also know that she has been once upon a time imprisoned within the blade. If she truly was this god amongst gods and nobody could touch her, then how did that happen, right?
I was just finding. I don't think it's cracked here. This is like right just before she turns around.
Okay.
It's like right before she turns around to get the arrow.
Okay. Nah, that's all juicy and whatnot. Yeah, fair enough.
Like, I don't know. I just don't agree. Like, I don't agree with what some of you in chat are saying as well, where she's like, she's too absorbed in her own hype. I mean, she literally turns around and stares at her, aiming the bow. If she's supposed to be this Giga mastermind, very clairvoyant puppet master, she should know that Alleria is either aiming at her head or aiming at one of the most important things she has, which is the trinket, right? And she just sits there and stares at her, and then she Pikachu faces when she actually
like you said, we just had a cutscene where she was able to disarm Alleria and make Alleria crawl. Why would she be worried about an Alleria?
Why would she let her do this in the first place? Why would she not just disarm her again?
Because she didn't think Alleria had it in her. She thinks
she's shooting paper mache arrows? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, she's shooting like a magic arrow that can like change trajectory. Have you seen that movie where they do like the slinging with the gun and the bullets have like a trajectory? That's what she does. Like the arrow goes, bang.
I don't know if it changed direction there. They didn't really show it.
Look, it goes, it makes like a toot.
Is that the actual sound effect
look at it, look at it in slow-mo. Boop.
No, I don't think it changes direction. No way, dude. Playback speed here. We'll go giga slow.
Oh, here we go. Yeah.
I have a problem with direction in the story. Well, that's what I said. Like I said, I think the story that's being told in this new expansion is fine. I like it. I'm into it. I want to find out more. I like Xal'atath as a villain, certainly more than Jailer. Not that it's hard to do. I'm totally on board with it. I just think that there's unnecessary, like, juvenile one-liner Hollywood lines that they add sometimes.
I'm not saying you're wrong, by the way, just for the record, because
I got you.
You are 100% right. Like this happened because it needed to happen, but there are lore reasons you can give.
Right? Oh, you're right. It did change trajectory. You're right. It does a bit. And two, I think there's just inconsistencies that, like, yes, like Nobbel mentioned, like you guys mentioned, you know, why is this the case? Sure, we can list off like 5 to 10 reasons why Xal'atath here is, you know, brazen and like doesn't care about Alleria, and she's like, oh, she can't hurt me. But like, man, I don't know. Come on, dude.
Mm-hmm.
You're the Giga mastermind who's been in the works for hundreds of years. You know, you're finally starting to reveal yourself to us and your plans, and you can't foresee that this still kind of powerful figure in front of you can do some damage. That's just my gripe with it.
And it's similar to
and you are correct, Nobbel. It did need to happen. Of course, at some point, this stuff does need to happen, but it could have been presented a little less this way. That's all.
Yeah. But then, it's difficult, ain't it? Like, you're building up this powerhouse that can do whatever, and yet we need to find a way to overcome it. And someone mentioning, like, Alleria should have had, like, more of an arc of a power gain, but she had, like, it's not a, she's reaching Super Saiyan 2. Like, she's becoming more stable. Like, in the background, she's become more connected to Terrellian, to her loved ones. Instead of trying to run away from those, she's actually embracing those around her that have become her strength. So she did have an arc where she's growing as a character. It's not out of nowhere that she's now more stable and clear of mind.
Sure.
Does that mean that she should be able to hit the dark hard as it does here? No. But that doesn't mean that there haven't been things happening. And then this part where Zalotth just yells really loudly and goes away makes you wonder why. Because you don't seem to be happy what's happening right now. Shouldn't you, I don't know, do something about it?
What do you mean? Zalotth?
Yeah, like she just goes away.
Like if she's so strong, why not like go crazy right now?
Yeah.
On them? Yeah. I don't know.
So, and that flows in line with what's happening there. And then for the question, like, what is Beledar? We do not know. All we really know is that it's not the tip of Sargeras' sword. That's all we really know about it. What is interesting to consider is that we have Zalotth here at the Priory of the Flame, sucking it out. Like, it's all been pre-planned, right? Like, at the beginning of the cutscene, there's like this really beautiful circle around her, like this part. Probably stream delay. But it kind of looks like there's a dark heart around the dark heart, which kind of makes me wonder, did Zalotth manipulate the Arafi to build up this priory here? How much did she actually plan out for that?
Well, it's confirmed that this is not the tip of Sargeras' blade. I honestly thought it was going to be the first time. The first time I ever saw a zone preview of this, I was like, is that just the tip of the sword?
Everybody has been saying, like, that's the tip. At BlizzCon, right away, they were like, it's not the tip. And now it's also been, story-wise, it's been woven into how it could not be the tip. So the idea is the Arafi are hanging out here down below. 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and then the crystal is like light. And at some point, the crystal goes dark. And Alleria and Anduin figure out that the day that Sargeras stabs the world is that when the crystal goes dark. Meaning, the crystal was there before the sword was there.
Okay. Anyways, I just wanted to watch these. We should have done them when we first talked about it. I just want to watch these because it's easier to watch these and then get points across that we were talking about earlier, and like the way the scenes are presented and stuff. Everything after that, and after the, I didn't think about it, but yeah, it is kind of weird that Xal'atath's just like, oh no, I must flee, rather than like, I'm going to unleash my wrath upon you for what you did. Everything after that was great. I actually think, as much as I harp on Anduin and being dinky and stuff, I think he had a really good moment here. And I actually disagree with you that he needed that. As much as I love seeing like a moment, I actually think it makes sense that they didn't make him like explode in light, right? Because he's just trickling back in now, right? He's just starting to get it back.
Yeah, but I'm talking like I need the whole fireworks, but more like, the sound effect that a paladin makes when they resurrect, like that very distinct that sound. It doesn't sound like that, but you know what I mean, right?
Yeah, the Hawk-Tua, yeah.
Yeah, the Hawk-Tua, spit on that thing. That's what I would like to have heard in the background, like an actual indicator, like, oh, he's throwing out a res right now, instead of just the light thing. That's all extra I needed just to have like confirmation on it.
Right. Fair.
But the callback is beautiful, and Anduin, like genuinely, I'm hooked into the Anduin storyline. Like the previous one where he holds Farron's hand as they connect to the light. Man, that fucking got to me. The small steps getting back to the light, hooked me hard.
The training montage. Yes, I remember. Yeah, I'm interested in Anduin's story. I made fun of him a bunch through the MSQ just because he kept like, he just like when he like got trapped with the Nerubians and stuff at the end of like the Azj-Kahet quest, I was like, oh man, not again, god damn it, Anduin. Like,
hi, Princess Anduin. Oh man, yeah, no, 100%. And it's like I know that people who saw the intro cutscene, like I'm not a fan of the whole man up thing, but I understand where it comes from. Like it's Warcraft is taking a different story direction with this, and it's not just smashing each other with a hammer. Like comparable in the past, Varian had to go through a lot of trauma as well. But what you see in game is that he just picks up a hammer or he picks up a sword and he goes swinging. Whereas in the books, he deals more with the emotional side. And in this case, actually focusing on that path of, okay, what happens to somebody like Anduin's Road? And again, this is a bit of the problem when it comes to Anduin's story, is that it's connected to the Shadowlands. Like, people checked out with the Shadowlands, so like, what the heck are you talking about? And this is their intro cutscene. This is what they're using to promote people to play their game. And it's like, come play WoW. We know that you have trauma from the Shadowlands, but come play WoW. And it's like, okay, interesting. But again, I'm just very happy with the direction and the slowness that they've taken with it, the small steps. And even now, he's not over his trauma. Even though he's reconnected the light, he's still taking it one day at a time. Yeah, I like it.
I think that they have to, though, right? Because you can't build... like, I mean, I mentioned this earlier. You mentioned it earlier. You can't just... Like, it takes time to cook, right? Straight up.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just start, like, this new... Oh, I mean, new-ish arc, right? They've linked Xal'atath to a lot of different things. But you can't start, basically, this new arc and then just... You know, in a year, be like, okay, here's the big finale. Let's move on, because then you just get Jailer 2.0 on your hands, right? Xal'atath can't just get here and then she dies.
Like,
who do you
like
think
I said,
is...
it's...
Sorry, go ahead.
Mm-hmm. No, it's very much like what's going to come next, because so the War Within has been promoted bigly with everybody's War Within. So Magni with his I can't feel the touch of my kin anymore, and that's fixed. Anduin with his trauma from the Shadowlands, that's kind of been fixed and is reconnected with the light. Khadgar is back. Thrall apparently doesn't have anything anymore. It might be for the future. So the War Withins have been dealt with. And again, what I mentioned earlier is it depends on how it plays out in the future. Like, did we truly just take care of this in a patch? Is that how it's going to go? We're going to get a threat, deal with it in a patch, and move on? Or is it the long burner? Are they actually cooking? And that's only something time's going to tell.
I can't remember, when was the last time we had... Because WoW, as you said, has been very cyclical in terms of its story presentation. Here's an expansion. Here's the big baddie of the expansion. Next expansion, right? We had Illidan. We had Arthas. We had Garrosh. We had, so on and so. We had Deathwing, et cetera, et cetera. And then sometimes they amplified it, right? You have Ashara and then N'Zoth all in the same kind of patch expansion. I think Gul'dan, maybe, was one of the only notable villains that, like, transcended multiple expansions. And it was only 2. That I can remember, at least. I mean, arguably some kind of like Sargeras, sorry, not Sargeras, Kil'jaeden returned too, but that's a little muddied. So yeah, I mean, this is probably gonna be the first time that they do like a multi-expansion villain, which means that who's gonna be the villain of this expansion? Because it's not gonna be there's no way to kill Xal'atath this expansion. Do you think?
Nah, doubtful. I think there was done interviews where they were very much hinting at, like, yeah, she's going to stick around. And I would call them crazy if they get rid of Zalotth already. No way. But it's a good question. Alleria? I don't think so. I got no clue. I got some ideas as to what patches and content we might see.
What do you think? Well, I mean, share that too, yeah. Turalyon, final boss of the expansion? Corrupted Turalyon? He goes in
we get
the
to
void
kill
after
Turalyon.
Alleria? What about this guy? When do we see him, do you think?
Sorry, this guy.
Iridikron.
Expansion 3, if we got to believe his words. He was like, when the Titans come back, I'm going to come back. And apparently the Titans are going to come back in Expansion 3. So that would be him.
Do you not think... where does Sargeras fit into this, then? Because he's a colossal figure as well. Who's gonna be the final boss of the trilogy?
Oh,
then?
I got ideas for Sargeras. Look, right. So back in Battle for Azeroth days, I had speculation going on. Right, I thought I was hooked into the WoW storytelling. So I thought Battle for Azeroth. We start off with a battle for Azeroth, where it's going to be Horde and Alliance fighting each other for dominance of the world. Battle for Azeroth, right? Then I thought, okay, Azerite, we need to heal the wounds. We need to save the spirit inside. It's going to be the Battle for Azeroth in order to save the spirit. And then I thought Azeroth is going to wake up and we're going to have to battle with Azeroth, because then she's like half corrupted. She's going to yoink that sword out of her back and be like, what have you done? And we're like, oh, snap, we have to take on Azeroth now? Oh, no. So what I'm thinking is Sargeras stabbed it in the back, right? And all these cosmic forces are like trying to go for her now. So in Expansion 3, I'm thinking Azeroth's going to wake up, and we just done Midnight, where she's like half corrupted and void and stuff, and she's half beautiful Titan stuff, and she's like, wow, completely insane. And then the Pantheon comes back, and she yoinks out that sword, and she's like, Sargeras, you left something! And then she just starts chasing him Looney Tunes style. And then the Titans just look at this happening. It's like, young lovers, ain't it? And then we get the help out. And then we go off into space, and we get the fights in the Great Dark Beyond.
You think we're going... Okay. You think we're going back? Well, okay, what comes after that? The Void Lords, I guess?
Space. Warcraft Space.
Didn't we? We just had that. We just came back from space 2 years ago.
That was Shadowlands. That wasn't space. What?
What do you mean? We went to...
Legion. Where did we went? What? What did we do?
Where did we face the jailer?
In the Shadowlands in Zereth Mortis.
Was that...
That wasn't space. That was like... not Zereth Mortis. That was like... a machine inside of the realm of death that was able to produce things like the Pantheon of Death and also create afterlives as many as they needed.
Too.
Hmm?
We also went to Argus, didn't we?
Yeah, that was Legion, but that was only one planet. And we've been to different planets. Like Outland is also a different planet, but imagine a lot more different planets that you can freely visit. Imagine the cultures and the planets and the worlds that you could play on. It would be like Legion, but then a whole bunch of them and not just fell and corrupted. There's Karesh out there, like the world from the Ephirials, but there's also there were like Warriors of the Past that were mentioned in Legion. We've seen in the Nighthold where they like open up the astronomer space. We've seen like a blue planet full with ice and a void planet and all kinds of planets we could visit. It would be great.
Yeah.
We would have planets to level in instead of just zones. Exactly.
I can't tell if you're being sarcastic or not. Isn't this what like everyone hated about like hopping around in the void in the Death Realm and different planets, and everybody wanted to just come back? That was what they said with Dragonflight. They're like,
yeah, but
we're
then
returning
they
to domestic
complained about
duties.
Dragonflight. Then we got Dragonflight. They got a stay-at-home story, and then that wasn't good because we got together as a family and everything was too nice. Here's the thing: nobody's ever going to be happy.
That's true.
I'm just telling you what will make me happy, and what will make me happy is going to the Great Dark Beyond and see all these cultures and planets and shit that I've never seen before.
Okay, fair.
There you go.
So okay, hold up. I wanted to mention Sargeras. That was like the, at least in my mind, the last predictive topic. Unless you mentioned what you think is going to happen with Sargeras. How do you think we're going to tie in together? What's your prediction for Iridikron, Xal'atath, and Sargeras all tying together story-wise by the end of this trilogy?
Oh, okay. So, in the Warcraft universe, there are these cosmic forces, right? So void and light and death and life and all that. And they're building up to the idea that these cosmic forces want to dominate the world. And they quite recently added a questline in which we go into the memory machine and we find out that inside of Azeroth, there's not just a Titan soul, there's something called a Prime Soul. And the Titans want this Prime Soul in order to turn the entire universe into order. And you might say, oh, that's completely new, but not really, sort of. Like in the past, there was just a Titan inside of it, and now they're going with like this whole Prime Soul thing. But it's a similar thing what the Jailer wanted to do. He wanted to claim the soul in order to like dominate the entire universe and make it new for him. The Titans wanted it in order to turn the entire universe into order. But then the question becomes, what does Zalotth want? And it could be that Xal'atath is simply for the void, and that she just wants to plunge the universe into the void. But I think it would be more interesting if Xal'atath is everything and nothing. That Xal'atath is this agent that is just connected to all the domains of the void, and that she doesn't particularly care which one wins. And then in the case of Sargeras, what I would imagine is Sargeras, the whole reason why he did his Burning Legion thing is because he was afraid of a world dominated by the void. And in his mind, he was like, okay, if the void does it, it's just gonna eat everything. If I purge the universe, there's a chance they might come back. So, you know, let's roll those dice. Let's take the gamble. But according to all sources, Azeroth is the final Titan, the final soul. The demons have said this, the Titans have said this, so I'm going to assume that they're right. Which means that Sargeras has no reason to be afraid anymore. If Azeroth is the last one and we deal with whatever Azeroth is doing, then the whole reason why he formed the Burning Legion is no longer there, which means that he might become this whole champion of the Pantheon again. Like, imagine that they suck out the fell out of him, Illidan sits on his shoulder, like, strokes his beard, and like, who's a good Sargeras? And then Sargeras comes back and is like, I'm ready to fight for good now, or for order, I should say. Because good or bad doesn't really come into play with these cosmic forces. They're more just, you know, we want everything to be order, and we want everything to be chaos. But the question is, what do we want? Ice cream. But I don't know what we want, because...
Delete Moonkins.
because we are creatures in the domain of order, right? Like the Titans have ordered Azeroth, which gave life to the races that we play as. So while it might be cool to be part of the Void, we go crazy when we deal with the Void. That's why we need cloaks and stuff like that. Otherwise, we go mental and we go like everybody dies now. So what do we want? I don't know. Going back to the Shadowlands comparison, apparently they were like the first ones, and this whole system of do we break this unjust universe and all that, shatter the Warcraft universe apart and break the chains of oppression and the rules put into place? Maybe. It's a bit out there. I don't know if the player base would be down with it.
You think Sargeras is going to become a good guy? Man, it's a little disappointing if that happens. He was canonically one of the biggest, baddest, most powerful villains, right? And
and we sucked him into the seat of the Pantheon.
Yeah.
I took care of him.
I mean, maybe we fight him and turn him good after the fight. We beat the evil. We're the ones that beat the fell out of him.
Beat the devil out of him. Oh, I like that. I mean, alternatively, then would be the question like, okay, what is Sargeras still fighting for? That might be a thing.
Yeah.
But a long story short, like they're building up the idea that one force should not be dominant, and what the Titans want is that they want everything to be orderly, and they're definitely pushing towards the idea of okay, that's not good either. Balance is what must be remaining. So I'm guessing that that's what we're gonna go for. A stalemate. Nobody gets to have Azeroth. I guess. Maybe. I'm gonna find out.
Wait, hold up. Back up a sec. What did you say about Azeroth being the last what? Azeroth's the last soul and Titan's not... Sargeras is not concerned about it. Why? I didn't catch that part. I caught that part right, but it didn't make sense to me.
The last expansion is called The Last Titan, if I remember right.
Sure.
And in Mr. Pandaria, there was a quest line where you got the heart of the Thunder King. You gave that heart to Rephion, he ate it, and he goes, oh, we have fallen. We must rebuild the final Titan. Do not forget. And then he was like, oh shit, they all forgot. What the fuck? So that was our first hint. Then during Legion, all the demons started to yap about, oh, Azeroth is the final one. We're going to claim her. We're going to claim her. We're going to... And then we stopped them from doing that as well. But apparently she is the final one. The final Titan soul out there. Do we know this for sure? No, but apparently that's what they've been telling us. And so Sargeras, his whole motivation for creating the Burning Legion is because he feared that the Titan soul was going to be corrupted by the Void. Because if that would happen, he was told that the whole universe would just be devoured. And so he made his Burning Legion in order to purge the world of all these corrupted Titan souls. And in his mind, maybe life would reboot itself. But if Azeroth is the final soul, and she doesn't become corrupted, or we deal with her, then he has no reason for his whole, oh my god, I'm so scared right now.
Except for the Void still existing, period. But yeah. Also, is he not a Titan? What if he gets corrupted himself upon re-entering orbit?
That would go... Actually, that would go against the lore. They have established that a grown Titan can't be corrupted by the Void. That's why they shot out the old gods, actually. Actually, they can only go for souls in the world, since they're still vulnerable inside, actually.
Actually, no, that's good to know. Fair.
Yeah. So that is established right now. So as it always goes, like lore is flexible, right? They can always change the rules. But that is what we have right now.
So if Noah Riddercron... So Xal'atath, Sargeras, Riddercron, probably players in Expansion 3. What happens in 2? Where are we bridging in 2? Do you think new villain for 2 and we deal with it then, or something that's introduced already?
In 2, Alleria has fully fallen to the Voids. We go back to the Elven lands where we're going to see Quel'Thalas revamped, as well as the Draenei is going to get a new Shefrev somewhere on Azeroth, and we can fly those capitals, which is going to be great. With the world plunged into darkness, we're also going to have a bit of a time skip. So it's going to be like Cataclysm 3.0 and 2.0, and we're going to world revamp. No, I'm just spitballing. I have no idea. But, we're going to... You're asking me like what's going to happen. I got to throw out something. I don't know. It could be.
No, like you think it's plausible that they do another world revamp? Shadow style? Void style?
I would love to see it, right? Like,
but that means they would have to unrevamp it in 2 expansions, right? In theory. Assuming we deal with the Void. Maybe we don't for 10 years. I don't know.
Unless we destroy Azeroth and we just say, GG, the planet is gone.
Bro. They did say that they want to take bigger risks with their writing and stuff.
And the logo with the Last Titan is the logo cracking open. So, but then you're going to, like, in the same vein that Dalaran has been destroyed, you can still go to Legion Dalaran, right? Like, it's still there. It's a matter of keeping it contained in a time bubble.
We're going Marvel now.
But it's fair to say, like, okay, the Cataclysm revamp could just be used in the future, but then in the same vein, like, you're not going to be leveling on Kezogar. You're not going to be about Kezogar like, oh my god, Zalotth is just this threat. No, you're still stuck in that time period. So I guess the same would go for a Void Azeroth, right? Would just be your new leveling zones. But again, this is all speculation, like, pulled out of my bum, because I have no clue where we're going to go next. I know Midnight, and I know that we're going to go back to the Elven lands, to the Olden lands. One thing that might be interesting is in the intro scenario with, like, the Void Elves, we saw knife wielders of the past. So those that have wielded Xal'atath before, and we spoke about the Dark Idons, who then accidentally summoned Ragnaros and unleashed the darkness in Grim Battle. But there was a troll, who Xal'atath manipulated to make, like, blood sacrifices, and they brought back this big baddie. And that big baddie is buried underneath Zulaman. So if we're going to go back to the Elven lands, maybe Zulaman, and this is also going to play a part.
Interesting.
She cracking. She cracking, and then there's a ring around it. Yeah.
Elven lands, Sunwell. Archimon killed Jaden 5.0.
No, they are gone.
Corrupted versions of them coming. I miss them so much, though.
Yeah, that's fair. I gave them good farewells. Although Archimon may be up in the air. But it's it's interesting, honestly, where they want to go. Like, I don't even know how they want to play out the War of Inn, to be honest, because we got Live Lands as a possibility. We got the Raffi Empire as a possibility. We could go underwater as a possibility.
You mean for, like, major patches coming up?
Yeah, for the War of Inn. Yeah. So it's like, it's anyone's guess, like, how do they want to play it out? They got plenty of things cooking and building up. It's just a matter of how do you want to play it out, and then how are we going to flow into Midnight? For all I know, we're going to be like at the end of War Within, like, yay, we did it, we fixed the War Within, and then Zalotth is like, yeah, but I got more for you, and then just that's how it goes. I don't know.
All right, interesting. All right, I think we meatily covered everything, but
how long have we been chatting? Damn.
2 hours and a half. Well, 2 hours. What? We started half an hour. Yeah, I know it's getting late for you. So I will ask then first, do you have any final thoughts for what's going on with the story right now? Not like predictions of where it's going to go, but like what are your feelings? What are your thoughts? How do you like it? I haven't even asked you how you like it. How do you like things compared to, well, okay, Shadowlands, yeah, but like where we've this recovery arc, so to speak, from Shadowlands, Dragonflight. How do you feel we're going?
I like Dragonflight for what it was. For me, it moved mountains compared to Shadowlands, because Shadowlands was just a massive burnout, right? So Dragonflight was like small steps back into it. It's like, oh, okay, I can see somewhat what you're cooking. This is kind of cool. The War Within, I'm waiting for the honeymoon phase to end, because right now, for me, I've got those blinders on, and I'm like, everything is awesome, everything is exciting. And I'm hard-pressed to find like major criticisms of the story so far. I think my major one that I have is that the Horde is underrepresented, or not represented at all. And the whole faction bit, I'm missing that part. Might be for the future, but for now, we got like Thrall, and that's about it. Beyond that, when I look at like what they're doing with the storyline, I can see the connections. I can see, like, okay, I can see the build-up. I can see the development of the characters. I can see what we're doing. The War Within have been quickly resolved in the first patch, but then it's a matter of how is it going to go into the future, right? Like, is this just it, and we're just not going to be dealing with this anymore, or is it going to play a part? It's impossible to say. And I'm really hoping, because again, like, story is great, and I really love the development that they've been doing. Again, with the stay a whiles, with the clicking on the dialogue, with giving people the time to actually explore it, the delves, the dungeons, the raids. Like, they're making big steps into the process of delivering the story. But now, as tomorrow is reset, we're going to be going into endgame, and that's where an expansion shines, in my opinion. How is the raid going to be? How is the Mythic Plus going to be? Delve so far on the alpha beta have not been able to grab me. Are they going to be better on live, or I'm going to be like, I've explored the story, I'm just going to go and chill, and I'm going to do, I'll drop in and out as I like. But at the same time, there's also strength for WoW these days. I don't need to play 24/7 anymore. I can just dip in, dip out, get what I want, and do something else, and not feel like I'm behind. So yeah, all in all, like I said, I really like the development that they're doing for the War Within and beyond. And I spoke with Chet about this a couple of times. Like, what would I want out of a WoW expansion to make me like go like, oh my god, I'm losing my mind right now. But we got such a massive list that I'm like, okay, this is no longer realistic for one expansion. So what they're doing is what I think is really smart. It's just small quality of life updates that are going to lead to much better things, like the warbands, like the follower dungeons, like things that are just nice to have and just added to the game. Over time, those small changes are going to make WoW a much better experience. And time is going to tell how the story is going to go. For me, I loved the intro storyline. An 8 or a 9 for me. I am definitely hooked in. And I'm hoping that they're not going to fumble it, because there's a scary voice in the back of my mind that tells me, yeah, but you like Shadowlands start as well. And I'm like, yep, you're right. Most expansions I like to start. So we're going to see how it's going to go.
Jaded, just like the rest of us. That's the way I like my Warcraft lore fans. Okay, cool. Then to wrap up, if you don't mind, it's up to you. Just like we used to do, a bit of Q&A from chat. What do you think?
Of course.
Just a bit. All right, chat. If you guys have any lore questions for Loremaster Nobbel, especially, TWW related, since that's kind of the theme for season 1 launch tomorrow, hit him up. I think he's in chat too, so you can just tag him. And that being the case, I mean, you can just pick him out if you like, or I can mediate. Doesn't matter to me. Why does Xal'atath have so nice feet? Okay, let's skip over that one. Why is Nobbel so cute?
No. Let's talk about that. Why do they focus on her feet in the cutscenes is the better question. Like, I know that we've had orcish nipples in the past that were literally pierced, but why in my cutscenes are the Zalotth feet floating?
Is this a positive or a negative for you?
Very positive, but still, why? These are artistic design choices that were made, and like, why? You can pick the questions, by the way. I think that is a better show.
You want me to do it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let's see. Does Illidan come back when Sargeras does, do you think? And who won the 1v1 at the end of Legion between them?
I would imagine so. Like, if the Titans are going to come back, it makes sense that Illidan comes with, because he is at the seat of the Pantheon last that we saw him. Who won the 1v1? I mean, totally Illidan. He's been kicking Sargeras in the nuts ever since. Like, at last, there he is.
Would you think Khadgar dying and Anduin not getting his light back this quick would have been a better choice? Nobbel.
I love that moment. So not necessarily. It all depends on implementation. Could there have been a storyline in which Khadgar stayed dead and Anduin connected later? That could have worked. But I think that the moment where this happens, I really, really enjoyed this moment. Not gonna lie. The Anduin no longer running away from it. It's at the same time, what we could also consider is that for the first time in forever, the end campaign was not time gated. So how much time has actually been spent between the leveling and that end campaign? And I love it, don't get me wrong, please don't lock it up. But I spoke about this with my chat as well. Maybe they should give us more of a time indicator in the storyline. Like, how long have we been on Kezogar? How long until Anduin went down there and actually reconnected? Like, has it been a week, 2 weeks? Have we been here for half a year? It's not really clear.
Fair. Thoughts on there being an NPC named Shard of Gorabal that appears during Memories of Azeroth. It's the first mention of Gorabal in game.
Cool. I still need to dive into those memories. I also know that there's one that explains like the origin of the Kobus. I haven't checked them out yet because I'm saving the keys. But cool. Cool way of dropping little hints. Like, do I have anything massive to say about it? No. But I do love those little tidbits that you can find. Like, there's a lot that they've added. I don't want to make the comparison, but like, you can explore the world and actually find like little shrines, little mementos, and they connect to the overarching story, where instead of just getting the MSQ, you now have a whole package that comes together. So stuff like this, where they use it, is brilliant. Yeah. There's also, if you're interested, by the way, there's a you can get a transmog on the trading post. Equip that transmog, go to the Prophet in Silphus, and he will respond differently on what you're wearing. So there's weapons that are connected to Sargeras, and he's like, oh my god, why are you wearing that weapon? Do you want to kill us all? And there's like a staff that was connected to the Mencius once upon a time, and like Zalotth was mentioned as his like second in command or something. Some cool interactions that they put there as well.
You kind of already half answered, so I didn't go crazy, but what do you think happened to Illidan? I mean, he's just chilling with Sargeras, right?
Yeah, I mean, we left him at the seat of the Pantheon with Sargeras there, and basically Illidan's arc was to put an end to the Legion. Like, that's why he was the anti-hero. That's why he signed up, and he always tried to do his own plans and whatnot. Didn't really work out for him, but, you know. And then he's been there, and what he's been doing is anybody's guess. Play poker, you know. I wanted to say something, and now I forgot. Oh, well. Yeah, that's it.
Oh, well. Do you think Thrall is finally back for good?
I mean, personally, I find myself on an opinion on that where not a lot of people align with it. Like, for me, people like Thrall and Khadgar and Jaina and characters that have like 50 pages on Wikipedia, they can retire, in my opinion. And I think that Thrall should have retired after the Cataclysm. But they keep bringing him back. So with Warlords, I like this fight with Garrosh, where you like disconnect from the elements. I think that is where they could have left his story, where he had to deal with that guild forever, and he had to be like a family man, no longer connected to the powerful elements that he was. But they keep pulling him back. And then he plays a part in Shadowlands, and then he plays a part in Battle for Azeroth, and he plays a part here, plays a part there. I would rather have other characters developed, because they're currently looking at the problem where the next generation sucks. And the next generation sucks because nobody knows the next generation. So, for example, Chandris Feathermoon now leads the Night Elves, or Tess Greymane now leads Gilneas. There's a council amongst the Horde, and yet Thrall is still the one constantly on the box art representing the Horde. And I know that people are like, without Thrall, there is no Warcraft. And I'm like, that's a problem. That means that you need to develop other characters in order to take that spot, in order to, you know, that doesn't mean that Thrall has to be killed off, mind you. They could just put him in the back and have him as an advisory role exactly as he does. I just don't need him constantly front and center. Like, remember Thrall, remember Jaina. Same with people that want a Medivh to come back into the storyline. And I'm like, I love the story of Medivh, but I love it because it's start, middle, and finish. It's over. It's done. He left with the beautiful words of, I'm going to take my place amongst the legends of the past. And his moral of the story was to teach the world it no longer needed guardians. In order to bring him back into the story, you kind of devalue what he built up back in the day. And it doesn't mean that I don't like the character. It's just sometimes it's okay for a character to have a dot at the end of the story, in my opinion.
How do you think...
So, long story short, is Thrall back for good? I don't know. But what I can say from history is that they can't let Thrall go. So I would imagine that he's just going to stick around.
Especially now that Medicine's back. How do you think Kalia Menethil and the New Forsaken will relate to this trilogy?
Good question. And this kind of flows into the idea of I would like to see more about factions and faction pride. I'm very curious how a Forsaken looks at the world, or a Draenei, or a Worgen. And we don't really get that. Like, Sylvanas abandoned the Horde, and the Forsaken were left behind. And they're kind of like, okay, we got a council now, but how do the Forsaken see their place in the world, and why do they still carry on? For the longest time, they were literally there to serve Sylvanas in her quest for vengeance upon Arthas, and then she came back, and then, you know, for the Dark Lady. But the Dark Lady is gone. So why are the Forsaken still around? And there are stories you can give. You can give them bonds to the Horde. You can give them a new purpose, a new way of resurrecting, because the Forsaken are dying out. They have no way of making more units, which is a bit of a problem. How could that flow into this arc? We do see the Arathi capable of resurrecting the Fallen with the light, and we know that Kalia has been resurrected in the light. That could be a connection, and that could be a way of keeping the Forsaken going. But it's also a matter of player reception and what are they willing to do. Because I know a lot of people do not enjoy Kalia Menethil in the position of leader of the Forsaken. And what they got right now, personally, I like Kalia and Lillian. I think that they're a good combo. But then will we see a Sylvanas return? Could we possibly see Sylvanas back in a leadership role? I personally would be mind blown if they do. But could they? Hard to say. But for now, a Forsaken Kalia storyline, I would connect it to the Arathi and diving into the whole resurrecting with the light.
Cool. Two different people asked this, so I'll combine it in the same one. Basically, I would like to know Nobbel's takes and theories on what the Black Blood is.
Blood of the Old Gods. People have pondered if there's like Azeroth influence in there. That I do not know, but as far as I'm aware, the Black Blood is just the term for the Blood of the Old Gods. And there's a theory, because we don't know why Sargeras' stab in the world started to darken the crystal, but there have been a couple of NPCs that make mention of like the Black Blood in relation to it. So in essence, the idea is Sargeras stabs the world, and the crust starts to rumble and shake, and so the blood started to like get loose and started to infect the crystal. This is also mentioned when Zalotth starts to suck out the void from the crystal, and she goes like, "Ooh, your emotions and your war feeds the Black Blood. It feeds my power." That relates to something we've seen in the past, which is the Shah of Pandaria. As you might recall, Yasharaj was pulled out of the world, bits and pieces of him fell back onto the planet, infused the land, and our emotions fed that, and that became the Shah. Could it be that that is a similar thing happening right now? So the blood of the old gods being fed with our negative emotions, it's infueling her power. But that's all, could it be, could it not be? Then there's also the Harnir with the roots who make mention of the black blood and the corruption that entails. And then the ascension of the Nerubians, who are using the black blood to become ascended and like hulking monstrosities and whatnot. But long story short, I think black blood is just blood of the old gods, but a different term for it.
Okay. I'm not sure if this was a comment to something else, but it just says, well, I assume, do you think there's World Tree roots in Azj-Kahet?
Yes. So this is one of those most likely patch contents. So we've done the Shadowlands, right? In Dragonflight, we learn more about the Emerald Dream, and we also got books. There's a bunch of books that are added in Dragonflight. I'm actually surprised how many. I've been working on the full story of the War Within, and I'm constantly repeating myself, like, there's a book in Dragonflight that mentions Xal'atath for the first time, and there's a book that talks about blah, blah, blah. So there's another book. It is the Legend of Alunahir, and it's a legend about the time that the Titans are bringing order to the planet, they find the old gods, and the Titan Eonar has a gift from her beloved Alun. It is the branch of Gahanir, a world tree, the first world tree, if I remember right. She plants it into the world. Amantul sees this, and he goes, "What have you done? You have infected my world with chaos!" And he rips out the world, and so Eonar cries, because, there was a gift from Alun. Then she notices that, like, oh, there's roots over there. That's cool. Amantul didn't notice that. I noticed that. So the roots are there. Eonar cried. And what's really cool, that if you fly down into Azj-Kahet and you pay attention, is that there are the roots, but you also notice that there's like oceanic leftovers. There's like coral, and there's like the trees that we saw in Nashatar. So I was kind of wondering, like, could it be that the tears of Eonar, salty tears, would make like a salty lake, and that is like what's happening there? I don't know. But either way, there are roots there, and you can fly up. There's like this Emerald Dream gateway kind of thing. If you fly up there, you fall asleep, and you get teleported down below. So I'm kind of thinking that's going to be a portal into the Lifelands. As we learned, the Emerald Dream is apparently like the ordered part of the domain of life. But go beyond that, you would actually go into the domain of life. And it's crazy, it's wild, it's nature and all that good stuff. It's connected to the goddess Alun and potentially other creatures. So yeah, roots, definitely. Thinking Lifelands and Treeway. Yeah.
Okay. Abba says, I was thinking the amulet was partly her connection to the world in some way, and she was forced to leave when it was shattered because she's much weaker without it. Thoughts?
Sorry, come again?
So with the relation to the Xal'atath trinket getting shattered or cracked, and she fled, remember? We commented about that?
Yeah.
So the question was, well, the thought was, I was thinking the amulet was partly her connection to the world in some way, and she was forced to leave as a result of it being cracked because she's much weaker without it. What do you think?
I mean, she didn't have the trinket until Dragonflight, and before that we have put her in a body, and then she liberated herself from the blade. So not necessarily her connection to the world, but being weakened or, being in the middle of a massive magical explosion could definitely have done some damage, yeah. But then, it's the same argument. It is Zalotth. You're building her up as like this powerhouse, Okay.
This one was kind of answered, but what do you think is going to happen to the sword?
I'm thinking Azeroth is going to pull it out of her back in a very gruesome, sick moment. It's going to be like, hey, Sargeras, you forgot something, and then slice him up into little pieces.
Very rated T for teen. Is Anduin the old king that Prophet Velen saw in a vision leading us in a battle of light versus void?
Maybe. So what I thought with Legion, what I thought was the moral of the story is that Illidan taught us, visions and prophecies are bullshit. Because in the end dialogue with Velen, he's like, did you not foresee this, prophet? And then Velen goes, ha ha ha, prophecies. So dumb. Imagine being called the prophet. Would it be me? But apparently now we're going back to the idea of, oh yeah, Lightwielders can totally foresee the future, because in the Arathi Empire, there's the God Emperor of Man, and he is so good at foreseeing the future that not only do they let it happen, they also manipulate it and not let prophecies happen for the glory of the Empire. So we're going back to the idea of, okay, prophecies are a thing, and in the Velen short story, it's a really old one, He looks upon Anduin, and instead of just the boy, he sees a man, shiny armor. In the sky, there are the dragons, which might be why the dragons have been re-empowered, right? So that they could be there. The Naru, the Horde, the Alliance, the light and great things of the world. And then there's this massive darkness, and the Prophet could not imagine any hope in this world, and yet the army charges towards it. That could be the Renilash, that could be the whole thing. And then, indeed, there was also a comic in which Old Man Anduin tells Velen, like, okay, it's time for the final battle. Maybe. I would say I think so, but maybe, yeah.
So you just indirectly answered somebody else's question. That was, what is Renilash? It keeps getting mentioned in Hallowfall.
Renilash is a prophecy of the final battle between light and void. It's why the Arathi traveled here. So the Emperor saw a vision like 10, 20 years ago he had a vision, and then he sent an expedition about 10 to 20 years ago to go find Beledar. And they did, and they got teleported on the ground. And not only did they find Beledar, they're not only there for the crystal, they're also there to fight in the great old big battle between light and void. How is the battle going to play out? We do not know. Are they going to win? Well, there is a book which I really like, because prophecies are kind of boring if you already know the ending. But one of the books mentions, light save us, the Emperor did not foresee our survival. And I'm like, oh, that's actually fucking sick. And they make mention of like the Titans being used to build walls, and the Harbinger, and the final star's got to be snuffed out, and then soldiers are going to lay down their spears, and the 1,000 years of sins of the Emperor will make him cry bloody tears. Renilash sounds really cool, not gonna
lie. A double question here from Garros. Haven't we been guided to a big goblin patch in The War Within? And number 2, Arathi Empire feels like more of an expansion theme than a patch. Maybe it's where we go after Titan? ?
Maybe. So the Arathi Empire is connected to the other side of Azeroth. The other side of Azeroth is something that's been speculated for many years, which is the idea that what we've seen of Azeroth so far is only half of it, and there's a whole other side of the planet that we have not met. You might wonder, how is that possible? Wouldn't it be, visible, and wouldn't those people interact with us? But it's a world with like cloaking mist and devices and storms and whatnot. There is a reason you can give to it. Could be a patch, definitely. It could be an expansion on its own. It's just a matter of, it's a possibility of going there in whatever shape or form it's going to take. Then the part about the goblin bits. Back in Battle for Azeroth, there was beta stuff hinted at Undermine. And Undermine is basically like the goblin capital. Imagine where all the sleazy dealers come together, and they got like hobgoblins walking around, and it's a capital for the goblins. Imagine for a moment that you got like the starting island, but then it's a capital, right? And I wanted it back in Battle for Azeroth, and I only got like the stupid dungeon, which wasn't great. So now what we're getting is Undermine has been mentioned by the goblins in The War Within, one of the side quests. We also got a short story with Monty Gaslow and Baron Noggenfogger. And they want to change the way the goblins do business, and they want to be more environmental friendly, and, they still want to make profit, but they want to do it without wrecking everything. Which obviously could lead to conflicts amongst the other cartels who are just like, yeah, but what about money? They could also bring Gallywix back into the picture, because Gallywix had this weird-ass cameo happening in the Shadowlands. Did he die? Did he teleport into the Shadowlands and just show up with the brokers? Like, we don't know. It was this random-ass cameo, never went anywhere. But it's definitely potential for a future story. Yeah.
Okay. It's not really directly lore related, but do you think Anduin is on an arc to introduce the next hero class?
I'd be down with that, to be honest. But then again, I'd be down for more hero classes. But something like, God, what could you do with Anduin? Like, he's not a paladin per se, but he definitely swings more a weapon than a priesty does. So maybe like a combat medic or whatever. Maybe.
Do you think they could get a Hallowfall, the Veil in MOP treatment, changing the zone for a patch? Maybe the crystal explodes or changes or something.
That'd be cool. The crystal, by the way, like, we don't know what it is. Personally, I'm putting my money on it's a spaceship. So
Beledar,
in the grand, yeah, Beledar, the crystal. Yeah, I think it's the spaceship that brought Zalotth into Azeroth. Because it looks very similar to the Nagrand one with the Genedar. Also Beledar, Genedar, Oshugun, whatever. Names, spaceships, yeah.
Okay. I recall Resurrection lore-wise being ridiculously difficult. How come Anduin recently reconnected to the light where he was able to resurrect someone that easily?
That's what I mean with I wanted it to be more of a bit of a, impactful. Resurrection in the lore is incredibly rare. Like, we memed about it. But usually when we're dealing with resurrection, you have something like necromancy or zombie or even Kalia in the light, right? A full-blown resurrection is incredibly difficult. And I'm genuinely, I need to double-check the sources, but I think I only know about Anduin who's done it. He's resurrected his father, potentially. I think he did Jaina as well in, not that way, in Enough of War Crimes. And then now, Khadgar, where he reconnects to the light. Now, how did he do it so easily? Anduin is a light prodigy. Similar to how Alleria is a void prodigy, Anduin has an extremely strong connection to the light. That's why Velen is like, oh my god, you are so cool. So that Anduin can do these things under the light of Beladar, reconnected to it. It's not out of this world, but it is incredibly rare to see it happen. Yeah. And that is to say, even if it is a full-on rest, because it doesn't specifically state it, but I would say visually with like the whole hand falling to the ground, I would say like, yeah, that's a rest right there.
This one's not directly lore related, I guess, so take it how you will, but somebody asked, what's our power level compared to main story characters like Khadgar, Alleria, etc.? Since we can just go kill these threats with 25 of us, are we about equal to their power? If
power
we had
levels
a
are
raid, could we do
bullshit.
it? Sorry?
Power levels are bullshit in Warcraft.
Yeah.
Like power levels, we are as powerful as the story requires us to be. And at some point we could go toe-to-toe with something like an Argus, and then at other times we are being felled by the local bear in the forest.
Yeah.
Power levels are not a thing. And it's
They're-
in the same vein of we are more like the backup characters for the story of Jaina. They have somewhat of a power level, but even then the power of friendship can do a lot.
This one was kind of answered already. Do you think eventually Blizzard ties the sword and gem in Halifal? But you said that was confirmed that they're not related. Well, not like literally physically related.
I mean, it's confirmed that the crystal is not the sword. But for all we know, the sword did do something with it. But people have also mentioned like Silithus is nowhere near Hollowfall, so how could it be the sword, right? I've heard the idea that Sargeras stabbed Kafun on purpose to get the blood of the old gods there. That's another thing, by the way. People have been wondering, like, how is the blood coalescing specifically at this location? Like, are there old gods nearby? How did the blood get through the crust? And those things, I have no answers for. Magic.
Do you think we'll see, and somebody else asked something similar about Bane, do you think we'll see more characters from the Horde side, or is Thrall just going to be a one-man Horde army representation?
Yes, please. Blizzard, you got more Horde characters, a lot more. Not just Thrall and alternate Thrall. You can bring in more characters. I would love to see them.
This one I already answered. Velen's vision of the final battle of Light and Shadows are coming true. Unless you want to add something else to that, we can go to next.
No, maybe.
Okay. Who do you think takes up the mantle of Guardian if Khadgar dies?
I think that like Khadgar is not the Guardian, and this flows back into the storyline of do we still need a Guardian? So Medivh's story arc back in Warcraft 3 was to teach the world you no longer need a Guardian. At that point, the Guardian had like protected the world for like thousands of years, but they also got corrupted. They opened up the Dark Portal and they brought the Horde in. And from that we learned like, oh snap, this defense system that we have is not invaluable. And Medivh went around fixing the mistakes of the past. Khadgar, very specifically in his Legion episodes, refuses to embrace the powers of the Guardian because he knows the lessons of his mentor. But it does not mean that he doesn't act like a Guardian, right? Like Zalotth calls him the Guardian, he has the staff of the Guardian, he walks and talks like a duck. But specifically, he did not grab those powers, and I appreciate Blizzard tremendously for doing so, because this keeps the Medivh story arc from Warcraft 3 intact. And again, I think that having a story arc where you teach the world that it no longer needs a Guardian, to keep that intact and be like, yeah, we need to go forward, is a lot more valuable than going back on it. That does not mean that I don't like the Guardian story arc, but I like it for what it is, right? In a similar vein that I'm not happy that the Dragon aspects are just Dragon aspects again. I thought that it was way more interesting to find out what life was like for the Dragon aspects when they had to work together with mortals to still maintain the domains, instead of, oh, for some reason the tree blessed them and now they're aspects again. But it devalues what they did with the Cataclysm. And so I'm more of a fan of building upon what you got rather than reversing the clock and redoing things.
Okay. Do we ever see Sire Denathrius again?
Probably. Denathrius was a favorite.
If Khadgar was trapped in Xal'atath's trinket, then what is the Guardian NPC flying around in Hallowfall?
I think people are mentioning there's like a reference to Baldur's Gate. I have no idea.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, in like Baldur's Gate 3, the things.
A request for you for the future. Can you please ask him to do another video explaining the Arathi timeline? I thought they were long gone up top, but the game now makes it sound like they're just chilling on top of the world somewhere.
I did one yesterday. It's up. It's called Arathi and Hallowfall. How? ? So it's yesterday released.
Okay.
We need some wave music.
Just reading through.
Oh, look at the Harnier, by the way. That needs to be an allied race, man. Oh.
Any chances to get more patches, in your opinion, related to the Black Empire and Ny'alotha? Or is that Dunzo after N'Zoth was?
It seems to be Dunzo, but it depends. But this flows into a similar answer. Like, for me, what they've done with N'Zoth is beyond ridiculous. An old god released from the prison felt like a wet fart. I think you and I spoke about it back in the day. And then we deal with it in a patch. Ridiculous. What do you mean? There's an old god out of their prison since the days of the Titans. That didn't happen, and they infect 2 zones, and that's it. GG. Awful. However, I think personally it's worse to go back on it again. Because then you just reverse the clock. Like, nah, you made your bet, and now you got to deal with it. So I don't necessarily need them to bring back the old gods and Ny'alotha as we did to just do it over again. I want them to do what they're doing right now, which is use what they've done and create more story. So they're using the defeat of the old gods in order to empower the Nerubians, in order to empower Zalotth and build future storylines. I want to see the next big thing. I want to go beyond Ny'alotha. I want to go into the Void Lord domain. I want Zalotth not to be an old god. I want her to be the next big thing. I'm over the old gods. Like, one thing that could be cool is if we like bring the old gods back, but then I want them to come back as one single unit, like in the Power Rangers. And you got like Kafun could be the eyeballs, and then Yaksharon could be the mouth, and Yasharaj could be like the brain, and then Zalotth can control them all, and it become like one uber old god. That would be kind of cool. But beyond that, I don't necessarily need them to bring back the old gods as they were.
All right. What is your opinion on Farron becoming the next Queen of Stormwind and her hinted past of being the daughter of the Emperor of the Arathi Empire?
So Farron as the Queen of Stormwind and connected to Anduin, that's one of the first things that people mentioned. But I also remember when Anduin was hanging out with Talia, the people were like, okay, he's gonna marry Talia, and then he was hanging out with Kalia, and he was like gonna marry Kalia, and he was hanging out with Auntie Jaina, and then he was gonna marry Auntie Jaina. So I see a pattern there, which is if a character interacts with another one, they get shipped together, and that's fine. In the case of Farron connected to the Emperor is interesting. Because Farron has the Lothar name, and Anduin Lothar on our side of the world was this big old hero, had this connection to Thoradin of Arator, and Thoradin was like the very first emperor of the humans, and due to that blood connection, he could call upon the aid of the High Elves. And now we find out that Farron is also a Lothar, but they're like very distant related to each other. And then the idea is that the emperor on the throne in the Arathi Empire would also be of the line of Thoradin of Arator. Interesting. Be kind of cool, to be honest. But then, that'd actually be really cool. Because, in essence, what Farron says about her bloodline is that don't treat me like royalty. Oh! One thing that would go against it is that Farron says that her family hasn't exactly done great in the Empire. And there's also the book of Arathi cinnamons, whatever. It's like basically sayings amongst the Arathi. And one of them is Lothar's Landing, that if you do a Lothar's Landing, you got like a 50-50 shot at doing it right, but usually it's kind of shit. So all these hints are hinting at the idea that Farron's family line is not exactly doing great amongst the Empire. So what I was thinking was that Farron indeed has like that Lothar bloodline connection, and that the Emperor is pretending to be a Lothar bloodline connection and is keeping them under his thumb, right? Like, I can see visions of the future, blah, blah, blah. And so he's messing with the Lothar bloodline. So when we come back, we got to be like, hey, what are you doing? And Because if they were like, if she was like the princess or whatever, then how would he still be emperor? How can you be the princess of the emperor of the Arafi Empire, who is apparently this big boss that can send out expeditions, but also have a family that hasn't had a lot of success lately?
Yeah, chat.
Would be my question.
Should we expect, you mentioned this one already, should we expect WoW 2 after the last Titan expansion with new characters and a complete revamp of the world?
Anyone's guess. But I wonder if like a WoW 2.0 is worth the investment on the current market. I don't know. Like, is the current audience looking for a new MMORPG? Or is Blizzard, in a business sense, way smarter off just repackaging and reselling the stuff that they've done in the past, as they're doing right now? A Plunderstorm, a Season of Discovery, a Mr. Pandaria remix. I think Blizzard would be crazy to take the risk of a new MMORPG compared to what they can do right now, which is just repurposing and reselling. And it might sound negative, but I genuinely enjoyed the crap out of Season of Discovery and Remix and Plunderstorm. So not bad. It's just, where do you make these choices? Me as a consumer, I would love for Warcraft 4 before we go into WoW 2. Give me an RTS where they can build up new stuff and then go into WoW 2. But that is purely from a consumer point of view. As well as, like, what would WoW 2.0 look like? Because I often wonder, are we looking for WoW 2.0? Or are we looking for the idea of going back 10 years in time, 20 years in time to when I was a teenager and played WoW for the first time? Because it can't sell me a time machine, unfortunately.
Yeah, I that's always been an interesting topic. I don't think the WoW 2 thing that people mention, and sometimes people just want an engine revamp. It's nothing more than just like, I want, like, you know, Unreal Engine 5 on WoW or something like that. That's always been an interesting topic, and one that doesn't really have a correct answer because there's such a wide fan base that, as you said, feeding off nostalgia, want new graphics, just hate WoW and want something what that isn't the current WoW, you know, things like that. Did Bane and Anduin get in a fight or something? Weren't they friends back in the Priest Order Hall?
Bane and Anduin? Yeah, why would they?
I don't know.
As far as I know, Bane just hasn't done a whole lot. But I think he and Anduin are still friendly. It's just Anduin has been in a self-imposed exile after the Shadowlands and trying to murder everybody.
Do you think, well, you mentioned this, but I guess to nail it home, do you think that this expansion is most focused on the Alliance on purpose and Midnight will be more about Horde?
Nah, I think, and this is something, back in the alpha beta, there was a dialogue box from Alleria who said something in the direction of, like the Earthen coming together, so too must we come together. No more Alliance, no more Horde, we're in this together. Feedback from people was like, what do you mean no more Alliance, no more Horde? I like my faction, what are you talking about? And they removed that dialogue, so it's no longer a thing. But it does make me wonder where the mind is at. So I pulled it on Twitter. I asked people, like, okay, factions, faction war, is it still your jam? Or you're like, nah, I'm good. It was 50-50, which blew my mind. Because if in my mind, 5 years ago, 70% would have been for the faction war and 30% for, like, it's good as it is. But it's also a matter of how the community develops itself. And a lot of people are just done with the faction war and with all that good stuff. Personally, as I mentioned before, I don't necessarily need to be bashing each other's brains in. I think that's something beyond faction pride. Faction pride goes beyond not being the opposite faction. But I want to know what these factions are like in the world today. And I think choices like making Gilneas open to both factions or making the new Night Elf World Tree open to both factions, I think that those choices, capital cities that are parts to the factions amongst the Alliance or the factions amongst the Horde, because potentially Quel'Thalas open to both sides, right? I think those lines should not be crossed. I think that should be preserved to the factions themselves. Of course, there's going to be neutral cities, and of course, we're going to be working together. But there should be such a thing as what is life like as a Worgen in the world. And the representation, while I 100% agree that the characters that we have are very much Alliance, they don't act like Alliance. It's very much like Thrall in the Cataclysm, where he was the war chief of the Horde, the previous expansion, and now he's my ally and I'm helping out. Same thing is happening here. Anduin is not for the Alliance, he is Anduin, and Alleria is not for the Alliance, he is Alleria. And that is a problem on its own, in my opinion. For me, faction still matters. Like that choice that you make at the beginning, red versus blue, I think that still has value. But maybe that's, you know, old man thinking, and it may be time to let go, though.
And you are an old man. Just a clarification, 2 clarifications if you didn't see. The question about the Horde representation, about the Anduin Bane thing, was just for the Horde representative answer earlier. So just tying into a different thing. And the WoW revamp thing was, I wasn't referring to a completely new game, but rather a graphic engine update and a refresh on the story, leaving everything that happened to the point as a history lesson and starting a new storyline with new characters. I mean, that basically you're just saying starting a new story arc, period, fresh from everything, which is not necessarily WoW 2.0. That would be packaged in new product, but I mean, they technically up till now, every expansion was its own WoW 2.0, right? If you're saying to like completely cut off ties with any historical WoW lore and any current WoW lore, then yeah, but I don't think they're going to do that. I don't see the benefit of doing that really, to just like axe everything entirely, right?
I mean, the benefit would be similar to... Oh, I can hear myself. Cool. Oh, there we go. The benefit would be similar to like Final Fantasy 14, where like, okay, we're closing the book on the story so far, and we're going to open up new pages. So you would have the benefit of no longer needing to know 20 years of storytelling so far. And the revamp thing, yeah, it sounds like the Cataclysm thing, I know, where just the world revamp and whatnot.
Okay, last couple of guys here, because Nobbel needs to hit the bed and get his beauty sleep, and my cats are going to kill me soon. And I just saw it a second ago. Now I lost it. Where was Viveli's question? Oh my god, where'd you go, Viveli? There it is. Did we already talk about... We did a bit. Did we already talk about the Sunwell and its future role in the story? Sorry, I missed most of the talk earlier.
Potentially, like in the past, the wells have usually been used like massive portals or gateways. Think, for example, Well of Eternity with summoning in Sargeras. Speculation-wise, we've seen Alleria go to the Sunwell before where she accidentally unleashed the Void. What if she would go there on purpose and try to unleash the Void? But that is pure speculation.
Okay. You can have lower in presentation. Yep. All right, chat. Looks like we got them all. If I missed anything, I'm sorry. Just repost, and I will ask Sir Nobbel. But I think we got them all.
Oh, about Farron, by the way. It's another race than humans. How so she
saying.
shares an ancestor with Anduin. So in essence, there was like the humans and elves, the high elves and the humans way back when. They fought together in the so-called Troll Wars. So you got the high elves from Quel'Thalas with the early humans of Arator, and they won the war. And you know what you do after you win a war, right? Like you know. And eventually, the empire grew so big is that they started to split apart. And so humans and high elves and half elves, they would go across the sea and they would live their happy little lives. So you can actually ask one of the Arafi that you find, like, what's up with the ears? And they're like, no, you can ask them, like, are you an elf? And they're like, oh, because of the ears thing. But in essence, I don't know if you can still call them like half elf, half human, because I imagine that over the centuries there's been, mixing and whatnot. But yeah, that is because there's elfish in there. Tell us in details.
Stop it.
But again, if you're, because we got a lot of questions about the Arafi, not the full-on plug, but I did do a video yesterday with like full-on details on how they came to be and whatnot.
In fact, this is a good segue to Mr. Nobbel. Any parting words?
I hope you're all doing great, and I hope that your special events are going to be an absolute blast. And I want to say thank you very much for having me here. Our sponsor for today is Xcar, who loves the stream so much that they will be here forever. But yeah, like I said, I've been over the moon with Warfin so far. I hope people are really diving into the story and enjoying it as well. And yeah, that's about it.
And the pleasure, as always, was all mine. Maybe we do this more often than every 2 years now. Maybe
back on it, yeah.
Maybe on major patches and stuff. Tell us where people can find you.
Nobbel87 on the internet, or just Nobbel. Type it in Nobbel Story of Warcraft, or you're looking for something specific, like you want to know the story of an Anduin or a story of an Arthas, just go to YouTube, type in story of Xal'atath. I don't have a video up yet that says why does Xal'atath have smelly feet, but I'm working on it.
How do you know they're smelly?
And for the content, I've been blasting. I'm nearly done with the main story. Then we're going to go into the max level end campaign. Then we're going to go into the raid. Then we're going to go into the delves. Then we're going to go into speculating on the future. And then just going to keep on updating what's going to happen with the storyline. That's all up on the YouTubes. And on Twitch, I also stream where I basically do this as well. So we talk about the lore and have a good time and drinks and food and all that good stuff.
Drinks are good.
Yeah.
My cat is going insane.
Yeah. Let's call it, man.
No, we're good. All right, brother. Thank you as always. It was a lot of fun. I certainly learned a lot. And the best part for me was I'm caught up on everything now. through not Disney means, so that's good.
The chat can quiz you for the next few hours and be like, "What did you learn?"
I might DM you a couple times then if that's the case. So don't go to bed just yet. But no, seriously, thanks for coming on, man. It's been it's really nice chatting with you again.
We've known
as
each
always.
other for way too long, man. I was just thinking about it. I think we met in like 2015.
Yeah,
Crazy.
It's been a very
Crazy.
long, almost 10 years, celebrating 10 years of novel craft. But yeah, no, seriously, let's jam again for like next major patch or something. You know, whenever more big stuff hits.
Solid.
All right,
All right,
brother.
chat.
Have a good
Bye.
night. Say bye to Nobbel, everybody. All right. Cool. There you go, chat.